Oh, Selena, look how handsome John is, Betty told her friend. She was 6 months pregnant herself. Spit, her friend looked at her. Laughed Betty. That's good. The girl lifted her son in her arms and kissed him. You're so superstitious. Betty always knew that. God protects him, Selena said. They had been friends since high school, and now that they— Oh, Selena, look how handsome John is, Betty told her friend. She was 6 months pregnant herself. Spit, her friend looked at her. Laughed Betty. That's good. The girl lifted her son in her arms and kissed him. You're so superstitious. Betty always knew that. God protects him, Selena said. They had been friends since high school, and now that they had both graduated and married, one was already a mother and the other was just getting ready. Where are they? Betty looked at her watch. I don't know, they should be here by now, she shrugged. Today was their special day. It was on this date that Betty and Selena had met their husbands. Yes, Harry and Carlos were friends. They'd been walking the streets of the city like girls, and apparently, as fate would have it, they'd met two friends. Since then, exactly 5 years had passed. They played weddings 1 month apart. At first, they wanted it to be on the same day, but then the girls changed their minds. And today they gathered to celebrate a small anniversary of their acquaintance, waiting only for their husbands. Are they knocking? Betty looked at her friend when she heard a sound. I don't know, go look. Carlos has keys. She looked toward the front door. Betty got up and went to open it. Indeed, there were young men standing on the landing with so many bags in their hands that they couldn't even knock properly. Wow, Harry, she can feel you even through the doors. Carlos looked at his friend. Come on, we were just scraping by. They entered the apartment. Where are you going? The girls looked at the huge bags. Now we'll get everything ready and sit at the table. Her husband did not answer her question. And he and Carlos really went into the kitchen, closed the doors, told the wives to wait a little. They looked at each other and quietly went into the room. That's the way it always was. Betty and Selena were very good guys. They were always in charge. The wives just had to be there for them and love them. Well, that was it. An hour later, Harry came out of the kitchen. He and his friend had dragged a large table to the middle of the room and began carrying the dishes they had just prepared themselves onto it. Boys, did you really do all this yourselves? Betty marveled at it every time. Enough already, her husband kissed her on the cheek. They sat down at the table. Everything looked delicious. Carlos poured wine into glasses. We thought of you too. The young man smiled and pulled another bottle from under the table. You what? I'm nursing and Betty's pregnant, Selena told him immediately. It's non-alcoholic, hubby parried. Good, then let's have it. She set up 2 glasses. It was so family-friendly, the friends sat around, reminiscing about everything they had, how they met, what they talked about, and the rest. I feel sick. Betty covered her mouth with the palm of her hand. Hurry up. Harry took her hand. She didn't return to the table again. In the evening, the couple went home. I don't believe there is such a friendship, Betty said to her husband in the evening. How can it be? Because we have one. He looked surprised. Yes, I realized that, but still, she was silent. But it was true. In all the years of their friendship, neither the boys among themselves, nor the girls, nor their families had ever quarreled. There had been a few misunderstandings, but never a big fight. Are you going out? Selena called her friend. I can't, it's my stomach, she admitted. You need to go to the hospital, the girl worried. She was silent, counting what Betty's due date was. I'd already thought about it, but I want to wait for Caustic, she said, but she was in pain. When are you due? Selena finally asked. In 3 days, clutched Betty. She was already sitting down. It hurt so much. Urgently, call an ambulance, her friend advised. Okay, there was silence on the other end of the phone. BT, Selena shouted, but there was silence in response. The girl crouched down in the hallway. She could hear her name being called from the tube, but there was nothing she could do. She couldn't, but he didn't. He just walked over and lifted her into his arms. Everything was ready. All that was left was to wait for the paramedics. They arrived. Harry carried his wife to the car. They took her to the hospital. The young man wanted to go with them, but they wouldn't let him. They wouldn't let him in the hospital anyway. She was already in the labor room. There were doctors all around. "Come on, honey, soon you'll be a mom," the midwife commanded her. There was a baby crying in the room. Betty looked at the baby and cried too. She was now the mother of the most beautiful baby girl, Lucy. She took her tiny hand as she lay on her chest. "Congratulations," the doctor whispered in her ear. "Thank you." The girl lay there, somewhere in the distance, still feeling the pain that had just been so intense that it hurt to even remember. After that, she was transferred to the ward, and Harry was already standing outside the window, waiting for his daughter to be shown to him. "Look, it's your daddy." She brought the little bundle to the window. "And my husband just cried." He shouted words of gratitude and wiped his tears. That made 6 of us. Her friends and her husband greeted her after she was discharged. "Yes, we'll become relatives," laughed the girl's mother. "I don't mind," Carlos said. They went home and decided to organize a small table. Lucy was a quiet child. After she was fed, she fell asleep and let her parents spend a few hours with their friends. John was a little over a year old. The boy was curious about who was brought in and put in the crib. He stood looking at his future girlfriend. "Why, Lucy?" Selena asked. "I don't know," looked at her and realized that's what she was going to be called. Betty turned to her husband. "It's okay. It's a great name." He kissed her hands. After a brief sit-down, the friends left, leaving the young parents alone with the baby. Lucy was growing up, as on the first day she was very quiet, not crying much, only at night when it was feeding time. Now Selena and Betty were walking together in the park with their strollers. "We should get together," Selena suggested. Yes, her friend agreed with her. They were visiting with Betty and Harry. The friends were sitting on the couch watching John and Lucy discussing something on their own. The girl was still so young that she was babbling incomprehensible things, but the boys seemed to understand everything. Let them grow up together, and then they'll be together too. Carlos couldn't get enough of the children's play. "I don't mind," Selena said, just as she had at the maternity ward. "Neither do we," Harry turned to her. That's how the boys grew up, always close by. John went to daycare late. He was practically 3 years old. Betty had tried to find a place for Lucy too. Now the boy and the girl were in the same garden. Their mothers picked them up every day, and they walked home together. When it was time to go to school, Selena would not put John with her stream. They waited a year, and the kids walked to September 1 together. "We did it," cheered the moms as their kids walked to class with their teacher. Yes, they hugged. From that moment on, John and Lucy became inseparable. They sat at the same desk, went everywhere together. They were even teased as bride and groom. "How are you doing at school?" a mother would ask her daughter when she got home. "Not you, but you," the girl told her. She was in the 7th grade. "Good. How are you doing in school?" smiled the woman. She was pleased that they had once made the right choice. John was sticking up for Lucy now. He loved her and would never let her get hurt. "Everything is fine. Today I talked to Selena. He said that after school we'll get married right away," blushed the girl. "Where are you in a hurry ahead of the whole life?" Did not understand the mother, but did not have anything against it. They gathered with friends, the children together, they too. "You know what my daughter said to me today?" They were sitting around the table again. "We know. John pleased us too," laughed Selena. The husbands looked at each other. They too were supportive of the children. School was going great. The boy and girl didn't have to run anywhere. They often spent time at home. "Exams are coming up. Have you prepared?" Betty came into the room. "Of course," turned at the same time, guys. "Good, I believe in you." She walked out and they were alone again. At prom, everyone was together again. "Remember standing here with you when our boys went to 1st grade, whispered Selena to Betty. "Of course, it seems like yesterday to me." The woman brushed away a tear. "And now we're already seeing them off," sighed the other. "Nothing. I believe that everything will be fine." Their husbands joined them. That's how it was. When the official part was over and the graduates went to greet the dawn, John asked for silence on the bus. Everyone looked at him in surprise and fell silent. "Lucy," he knelt in the aisle by her seat, "will you marry me?" The classmates applauded. Some started whistling and hooting. "Of course I will." She hugged him and took the ring. John stood up. He hugged Lucy. Ever since he was a little boy, this boy knew that she would be his one and only and his favorite. They reached the place. Everything was calm and Jacoptic. The boys separated from the big company and spent time alone. Look, showed the girl the ring to her mom in the morning. Guys, why in silence? Why did not tell us anything? She took Lucy's hand and looked closer at the jewelry. I did not know, John so decided. Probably today we will gather, modestly answered the daughter. Okay, I'll go call Selena. The mother walked down the hallway and smiled. Everything was just as they wanted it to be. The families gathered together. They congratulated their children and rejoiced that they would soon be relatives. Well, shall we go? Lucy looked at her lover. It was only a few days before their wedding and they had a lot to do. Yes, nodded the boy. Everyone was busy with business. Lucy had taken her entrance exams only a week ago. John hadn't joined her. He was due to serve in the army. The wedding was in the last days of August. After that, Lucy started to prepare for her studies. John received a summons. It was not very happy news, but the guy did not show any sign. How am I here without you? She snuggled up to her husband in the evening. They were sitting at home in front of the TV. Lucy, you're at it again. He was nervous. What's the big deal if I'm worried? She looked up at her lover. You think I'm not worried? They talked about it every day, so the topic got a little tiresome. John, for some time before the draft, came to the same city where the girl studied. He didn't want to live away from his wife. Will you come with me, or by the weekend we'll be at your parents'? Asked her boyfriend, when before his departure was only a few days. Of course, I will go. She did not understand his question, because she loved him so much that she was ready to go to the army. The girl wrote a statement so that she would not be lost in her studies. The reason was serious, so no one would not interfere. Selena and Betty were crying. The fathers just kept silent. Friends gathered around the table, all raising their glasses and doing something. Dismissed early, Lucy and John went into the room. Will you wait? He looked at the girl. Why do you ask? Of course, yes, she kissed him. Tears rolled down from her eyelashes by themselves. Lucy couldn't help it. In the morning at the train station, she stood and stared blankly at the departing train. Don't worry, daughter. Time will pass quickly. We will support you. Her mother-in-law hugged her. Thank you. She turned away and walked away. Now the girl wanted only one thing, to go with her head into study, to do something, only if the hours and weeks would pass faster. Daughter, maybe you should move temporarily to a dormitory. Why spend money on rented accommodation? Her mother asked her. Yes, I also thought about it. There are girls there. Everything will not be so sad in the evenings. Lucy has already packed things for the move. Good, you're a good girl. The woman hugged her. John wrote often. In his letters he described where he was, what they were doing there. Lucy answered him with the same frequency. Why are you always sitting here like a mouse in a hole? The roommate came in after a walk. I'm studying. She pointed to her notes. I'm also studying, but you don't need to wave your hand at yourself. Come with us tomorrow. You'll have a good time, she suggested to her. I don't know what my husband will say. She looked at the sealed envelope that was to be sent tomorrow. I think he'll be all for it. Julia sat down on her bed. Okay, we'll see tomorrow, Lucy agreed. The next day in the evening, she and a few other girls went for a walk around town. They decided to sit for a while in the recreation area, which was in the very center. There was a fountain, of course. At this time of year it was not working, and a few benches, their girlfriends and occupied. Why did you get married so early? Julia asked the girl. I don't know, John wanted it that way, she answered. It is clear that nothing is clear, she laughed. Lucy heard the girl and looked around. She didn't know who knew her. Archie, she saw her classmate. How are you here? He came over, with a few other kids with him. I'm studying. Why are you here and not in the army? John's gone. She motioned for the boy to sit down. And I got in. I have a deferment. He looked at the girls. He remembered that he was not alone. I see. But my husband didn't want to, she said sadly. Oh yes, he's your husband. Archie remembered the proposal and the wedding. Yes, she noticed that the young men had approached the girls and were now getting acquainted. There's nothing to be bored of, the young man said cheerfully. Come with us. It'll be fun. It probably won't work tonight. Lucy turned to Julia, looking to her for support. Why not? The time is still childish. We'll have time for everything. The neighbor was already sitting next to the guy. Okay. The girl was not worried. Archie was a normal guy. He would not give her offense. That evening, they went to the young men's apartment. They rented it for everyone. The guys quickly organized the table. Funny dishes started to appear on it. Wine, melted cheese, bread, leftover sausage, buns, student kit. "I'm so glad I met you today," served Archie a glass of Lucy's red liquid. "I won't," she pushed the container away with her hand. "Come on, here's to introductions," he insisted. The girl looked at the others. Everyone was having fun. They were already drinking heavily. Well, she took the glass. Archie raised his own. They silently touched, and Lucy took a sip. She had tasted champagne once before, when they had been married, so she didn't like the tart liquid. The girl wanted to put the glass on the table, but the guy didn't let her do it. In the evening, when it was already very dark outside the window, Lucy and Archie sat in a small room on his bed. The girl's head was spinning. She was smiling. "Lucy, do you know how much I loved you at school?" he whispered in her ear, hugging her himself. "Archie, I'm married." She pulled his hands away. "I know, and I'm not saying anything, but my husband's not around." His breath tickled her neck. It was funny. I'm not like that," she said in a slurred voice. "Okay, I can wait." He kissed her cheek, then stood up, helped her up. "Maybe we'll go to the dorm. We have school tomorrow." She saw Julia making out with one of the guys. "Do you want me to walk you out?" Archie asked her. Yeah, she wasn't going to stay here. They reached the dormitory without adventure. Archie hugged Lucy on the steps. "I'll come back tomorrow. We'll go for a walk," he told her, his face so close it looked like he was going to kiss her. Lucy herself doesn't know what was wrong with her at that moment, but she wanted it. Archie touched her lips gently and let go. She walked into the building, went up to her room, lay in bed, and instantly fell asleep. In the morning, she walked to class and remembered what had happened yesterday. Why she acted like that, what she was missing. It was embarrassing. She had only met Julia at school, and she was cheerful. "Are you going to the guys today?" she asked her friend. No, the girl didn't want to. But no one considered her opinion. Archie came to pick her up in the evening. He was waiting for her on watch while she got ready. All day long, the girl knew she wasn't going anywhere in the evening. But as soon as she was told that a young man had come, she gladly began to get ready. "Hi," she walked out to him. "What took you so long? It's like a date," he laughed, and they walked outside. Lucy liked walking next to the strong and handsome Archie. Of course, she had no feelings for him, just friends. But the guy didn't understand that. He perceived her behavior as if she was flirting with him, and she'd agreed to go out. "Archie, why?" He brought her a huge bouquet of flowers. "I just like to make you feel good." He hugged her and kissed her on the cheek. In her letters to John, Lucy never said a word about being in a relationship. They also corresponded, confessed their love to each other. Lucy wrote that she was waiting for him. And the new friend kept coming, bringing gifts, flowers, inviting her on dates, which Lucy took for simple meetings. "Are you ready?" He came for her again. Yes, she came out to him. It was already warm outside, so it was possible to spend time somewhere in a summer cafe. "Lucy, I care about you." The young man took her hand. "Archie, why, you know everything." She lowered her eyes and took his hand away. "Perhaps your love with John is all far-fetched," he told her. "That's enough. I'm going home." She still wouldn't look him in the eye. "Okay, think about it." It turned out that they spent the summer together, and in September, they started to meet again in the city where they studied. "We should celebrate our new year of study," Juliet insisted. "I don't mind," Archie said immediately. They got together again at the guy's apartment. Wine, talking, laughing, dancing. Archie went to see Lucy off. As they walked past the park, he put his arm around her. "What are you doing?" She pulled his arm away. "Lucy, stop breaking down." He was very drunk. "Archie, stop it. I trust you as a friend. And you." She walked faster. "What about me?" The guy caught up with her and grabbed her arm. "Nothing." She was trying to get away. "Wait, why did you let me do all that then?" He shouted in her face. "What did I let you do?" She really didn't understand. Taking gifts, going on dates, what? It was all for nothing. He couldn't calm down. "Stop it. Let me go." She ripped my arm out and ran. "No, I'm not letting you go that easily." He pushed her. "Please, you've been so good," she cried. "It's over." He pulled up her skirt. "Bastard," she spat in his face. The guy stopped. The spit seemed to sober him up. He sat down on the pavement. At that moment, Lucy jumped to her feet and ran as fast as she could to the dormitory. "Lucy, what happened?" The janitor shouted to her. She saw that the girl's hair was disheveled and her sweater was torn, but she had already run away without answering her question. Archie didn't show up for a few days, probably because he was ashamed and Lucy didn't want to see him. The girl did not tell anyone anything, just stopped gathering company. "Why weren't you with us yesterday?" Julia asked her. "Just did not want to, try to look natural, girl." "Well, I see I'm not in the mood. I don't want to pester the neighbor." Archie showed up a week later. He called Lucy. She didn't want to go at first, but it was necessary to find out everything to the end. The girl came down to the watch. "Let's go for a walk," her boyfriend called her. "No, I'm not going anywhere with you." She remembered the last walk. "Why, I love you," he shouted so that everyone paid attention to them. "Enough, stop this concert. My husband is coming back any day now." She wanted to leave. "You'll be sorry," he began to threaten. "What can you do?" grinned the girl and went to her room. John wrote down the date he would be back. By this day, Lucy had arrived at her parents' house to meet her beloved husband with them. John got off the wagon all handsome. He walked up to his mother-in-law and wife. All together they went home to celebrate the meeting. The fathers were not at the train station. They prepared everything at home. When everyone was assembled, the questioning began. And the next day the guy and the girl went to the city. There they again rented an apartment. The guy wanted to enter at least a college, to have at least some education. "How glad I am that we are together again," she hugged her lover. "Thank you for waiting." He pressed her against him. For a week, everything was very good in the couple. On Monday, Lucy went to study. She had no premonitions. She sat out her classes. After that, she went to the store, bought groceries, and hurried home. "Selena, I'm home," she shouted as she entered the apartment. She didn't hear a response. She walked into the room. The guy wasn't there and neither were his things. Lucy stood confused. She didn't understand what had happened. "Please pick up the phone." She stood with the phone in her hands. Her husband was unavailable. She threw the phone on the bed. She herself buried herself in her pillow and started to cry. He couldn't go anywhere, only to his mom. The girl got out of bed, began to pack. Not a few hours later, she was in her hometown. "Mom, did John come by?" she asked from the doorstep. "What are you doing here?" A woman came out to her. "Answer me." Lucy was waiting. "No, what happened?" Her mother was curious. "I'll tell you later." "I don't know yet." She went to her mother-in-law's. "Aunt Selena," she knocked on the door. "What do you want?" John opened it. "Please, love, explain what's going on." She wanted to hug him, but he pulled her arms away. "Lucy, we're breaking up." He was very serious. "What? Why?" She sat down on the poof in the hallway, covered her face with her hands and cried. "Here, this is not enough for you." He did not explain anything to her, threw an envelope in front of the girl. Lucy took the envelope, opened it. There was a letter and many pictures. The paper stated that she had been dating a certain Archie for a year. He gave her flowers, gifts, went out, kissed her. Attached to all this were photographs. One of her sitting on Vladimir's lap, another of him giving her flowers. Lucy threw it all on the floor. She cried even more, realized that the classmates so decided to get back at her. "Selena, I'm sorry, but we had nothing." She approached her husband. "Don't call me that. It was obvious he had no intention of communicating. I swear to you. Yes, we dated, we went out, but it never went any further than that." She was silent, remembering the night Archie had almost committed a terrible act. "Why didn't you write to me about it? He's a friend of ours. I would have said you were in the same company, but you didn't. Why?" He didn't look at her. "I don't know. I didn't want to upset you. I don't need anyone else but you." She sat down next to him. "No, I can't forgive that." The boy put his head down on his hands. But why? She was getting hysterical. "It's a betrayal," he said quietly. "John, I understood everything. I realized I only need you." She stood up, came up behind him and hugged him. "Lucy, don't. He hasn't done anything. He's a scoundrel because I didn't go with him. He did that so you and I would break up." Lucy didn't want to tell him about that situation. "I don't care which one of you." "Which one?" He got up and went into the hallway. The pictures were still lying there. I'm not leaving until you forgive me, Lucy said. Well, you can settle down. You've been here a million times. You know what's where. The guy started to put on his shoes. And you. The girl cried again. And I need to think it over. He walked out and slammed the door. Not 15 minutes later, the door opened and Selena walked in. She saw the girl, the mess in the hallway, came up to her. What happened here? The mother-in-law asked. John left, slumped down in Lucy's chair. After that, they called Betty. She came over. Lucy told them everything. Yes, I know that she was in touch with this Archie. They even came to visit together, was surprised by the mother that her husband did not believe her daughter. Look what he sent him, showed the girl the pictures, chose the most provocative ones. The women read and looked at everything. So, now I'll call him. Selena got up and started dialing her son's number. What's he saying? Betty looked at her. Lucy, go home. He said he'll think about it. He'll come and talk to you. Selena spoke quietly and stroked her daughter-in-law's back. Do you promise? She raised her eyes to her. Yes, she kissed the top of her head. Lucy packed up and walked to the train station. She sat in the apartment again and suffered. How she wanted to find Archie now and tell him everything. But she knew how mean he was, so she didn't want to make things worse. The next day she was back at school. Every time she came home she hoped John had arrived, but he hadn't. Hi, he came after a month. John, she wanted to throw herself at him but didn't. She thought she would push him away. I came to talk to him. He came into the apartment. And that was it? Lucy felt like she was going to cry again. Let's see. He walked over and sat down on the couch. Ask me, I'll tell you everything. She sat down next to him. Tell me everything as it happened, her husband asked. And Lucy told for about an hour how it all began and how it ended. The only thing she missed was the story in the park. Why didn't you tell him you thought of him as a friend? The young man couldn't understand. How could I realize that he doesn't know it himself? She reflected. Yeah, you still have a lot of learning to do, he smirked. John, I swear to you that, between us, nothing happened. She moved closer to him. I believe you. He reached out and hugged her. Really? She snuggled in. I went out with him. He couldn't really say anything. And at the end, he admitted he was doing it out of spite. Just like you said. John leaned over and started kissing his wife. Lucy was glad that she and her husband were doing well. Now every morning she prepared his breakfast, went to study, and in the evening they had Jacoptic meetings. John went to school, at the same time went to work in the police. Lucy rejoiced in her husband's success. Darling, guess what? She was holding a small box. I don't know. He took the gift from her hands. Open it. She stood there without breathing. The young man opened the lid, looked first inside and then at Lucy. Is this what I think it is? He didn't want to get excited ahead of time. Yes, she clapped her hands together. Inside the box was a 2-strike pregnancy test and a pacifier. We love it. He stood up and hugged her. Afterwards, the young people informed the future grandmothers about everything. The latter were, of course, delighted. John continued to work. Lucy had only a few months to finish her studies. After that, she was not going to get a job anywhere because she would start her maternity leave. Wait, her husband pulled away from her. His phone was ringing. Okay, she went into the kitchen. Honey, I'm being paged. He's leaning over her from behind. What? It's your day off, she got upset. Yeah, but some thugs robbed the cash register in one of the villages. They were spotted and now they're inside shooting back. He was fully dressed. Be careful, his wife kissed him. He walked out of the apartment. Lucy herself doesn't know why, but she crossed him. She had never done that before. Lucy, the phone rang in the night. Yes, she didn't understand anything when she woke up. You can come to the hospital. John is hurt, a male voice told her calmly. Not understanding, she sat up in bed. Come, a silence formed on the other end. She didn't realize what she was doing. Rushed to the hospital. What? She expected to be led to John now. Those scumbags were shooting buckshot. He's been hit. He's unconscious now. Muttered what was probably a co-worker. Can I see him? Lucy asked. I don't know. He looked around, looking for a doctor. The girl was thrashing around the corridor. She couldn't gather herself. When the doctor came to them, he explained that the wound was serious. The shot could go in different directions. Lucy started calling her and John's parents. By morning, everyone was gathered. Selena was crying. No one was bothering her. For 3 long days, women and men took turns being on duty at the hospital, and on the morning of the 4th day, John died without regaining consciousness. "Daughter," her mother called her. "No," she screamed into the phone. "Hold on." Her mother tried to find words of encouragement, but nothing worked. "I'm coming." Lucy wanted to get out of her seat and run to them. "No, you don't have to. We'll be right there." Betty stopped her. Everyone was saddened by this sad event. They just sat there in silence. Lucy was staring at one point on the wall. She couldn't even move. "Daughter, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. Your husband was a hero." Carlos sat down next to her. "I know." Her voice was lifeless. The day of the funeral, Lucy went crazy. Nothing could stop her. She screamed like a wounded animal. And when no one was home, she even tried to kill herself. But her mother came back in time. "Daughter, what are you doing? You have to live. You will have a child." She grabbed her and held her for so long until she stopped kicking. "Mom, I can't do without him. He's my life, my love," the girl screamed. "Everything will be fine. Remember that you'll have a little one soon. Then your brains will fall into place." That's how Harry caught them when he got back to the apartment. What? He didn't finish, he realized. The procession was very slow. So many people had gathered: colleagues, acquaintances, friends, relatives. They were really burying him like a hero. And only Lucy and Selena sat on the bench because they could not believe that their boy and husband were no longer in this world. "I will always be with you." Lucy rushed to the grave. Her father managed to grab her in time. He was ready for it. When it was all over, she just fell on all those wreaths and flowers and sobbed in her voice. "What can I do to help her?" Betty looked at her husband. But at that moment, the girl was writhing in pain, and her mother noticed it and came running over. "She's bleeding," the woman noticed. "Hurry up and call an ambulance." The car arrived. The girl looked like a mad woman. The paramedics had to deal with her. When everyone arrived at the hospital, it was clear that nothing good to expect. And so it was. The doctor came out and told the family that the girl's baby was gone. Why did this happen to her, to our girl?" cried Beatty. The father was also somber. "The girl is under sedation now, but in the evening you can pick her up," mumbled the doctor. "Okay." Beatty looked at her friends. "Unequivocally, we are taking her with us," said Harry. When her parents arrived in the evening, Lucy wasn't herself. She seemed to exist, but really everything inside felt like it had been scorched. When she arrived at her parents' house, all she did was lock herself in her room and sit there, tears flowing all by themselves. "Daughter, you have to come to your senses," Selena told her. "I understand that, but everything died inside me." Looked at her with colorless eyes. "Daughter, well, tell me, what do you see as a way out of this situation?" The mother was ready to do anything to help her girl. "I was thinking, maybe I should go somewhere. I will be distracted by my work. I will forget." Lucy turned away to the window. "Of course, if it will make you feel better, then please," she went on all the girls' terms. Already the next day, Lucy began to pack. Her friend had long ago suggested that she go to work on a shift. And now she was finally right for it. "Julia, is your offer still valid?" Lucy called her. "Yes, of course. We're always in need of hands," she said happily. "Then meet me in a couple of days and I'll call you," Lucy decided. She sat at the table with her relatives. It was not as cheerful as it had always been. Selena supported her choice. She continued to socialize with Betty. Lucy slept very badly that night. She was plagued by nightmares. She dreamed of a girl who was reaching out to her and asking her not to leave. In the morning, the girl woke up in a cold sweat. Lucy left. She sat on the train, looking out the window, and thought about nothing. At the station, she was met by Julia. The friends hugged. While driving to the place, the girl told everything that happened. She could only sympathize. "Well, here we are." They got out near some building. Now Lucy had to live in the dormitory again. And again her roommate was Julia. "Just like back at school," she smiled. "Yes," Lucy shook her head. In the morning they went to work. The new girl had to learn everything. They had to work in the dining hall, washing dishes, floors, walls, and everything else. Sometimes she'd be asked to serve. It was understandable. "Well, do you agree?" Her neighbor looked at her. Yes, I have no choice. Lucy was ready for anything. The work was hard at first. When she got involved in the process, there was no time left at all. From the very morning until late in the evening, the girl was in the kitchen. She came home and just fell off her feet. But after she realized everything, she grew to her working time. Now she could have tea with the girls and go out in the evening. Let's go. There is a place where everyone gathers to spend leisure time. Julia called her when it had been a few weeks. Okay, Lucy wanted to go out. They packed up and set off on their adventure. Lucy knew that with Julia she was sure to find them. Oh, what beauties! They hadn't gotten anywhere yet and they had already been spotted. Two young men stopped to meet the girls. Hi, Julia said to them. What do you plan to do? The young men were curious. We haven't decided yet, the neighbor said honestly, and it was true. Come on, you can help brighten up our boring evening, they called the girls. Lucy said nothing, watching. They came to the local cafe, which was very small, but there were so many people here that it was strange how everyone got in. So here's to the meeting. The young men were fun. Let's get acquainted. The first thing Lucy said pleased everyone. That's right, the people in the room caught on. I'm Steve, and this is my friend Austin, now spoke the one who before that was also more silent. Lucy sat sad. She didn't want anything. Then Steve called her outside. Do you want to go for a walk? He was already giving her his hand. Okay, they went. The town was small. They came to a house. Would you like to come in? The new acquaintance asked. Why not? Lucy didn't care. They went into the place where Steve had rented a place. It was obvious that he was not alone. Wine? He pulled a bottle out of the cupboard. Come on, the girl agreed to everything. When the bottle was emptied, Lucy sat looking at the young man. Come to me. He held out his arms to her. She stood up and walked over, dizzy. It felt good because all thoughts had gone somewhere. Steve sat her on his lap and started kissing her. The girl liked it. She gave in to his caresses. She was staying with him that night. Wake up. You have to go to work. Steve woke her up in the morning. Her head hurt. It felt like it was going to fall apart. Yes, thank you. Lucy was embarrassed because she found 3 other males in the room. I'll come back tonight, the young man promised, but Lucy never met him again. What, are you waiting for him? Asked Julia. How is it that in such a small town, we have not met for several weeks? Did not understand the girl. They can come for a one-time job, pull a heating main or an electrician, and go to the next object, explained the neighbor. I see. Lucy looked at her hands, which had become rough from the detergents. They continued to get out with her friend. Lucy had already gotten into the work. In the 6 months she had been working here, she had not given up wine and men. Lucy, you weren't like this. What happened to you? Julia asked her. My problems. She didn't want to justify herself to anyone. Her mother called every day. Lucy sent her money and lied that there was a lot of work and she couldn't come home. Betty believed her, so she didn't say anything. And the girl went on with her life. Julia, are you coming today or not? She called her friend. Wait, she had a headache, so she couldn't get out of bed. Okay, I'll go then, slammed the girl's door. It wasn't often that they had time to go out, so she didn't want to waste it. That evening she met Sasha. He was so handsome and also brutal, it seemed to Lucy. They took a long walk, talked, and then went to visit him. He lived alone. That was good. Lucy and Alexander spent the night together. In the morning, Lucy went to her place. She no longer expected to meet the man, but he came the next day. You? The girl was surprised then. Why such a surprise? He did not understand. Simply, she was ashamed to admit it. Are you coming? He waited for an answer. Yes, this insolence and something else like Lucy in this man. Once again, they were at Alexander's house. Everything was going well. He was doing a lot for the girl. Julia, he asked me to live with him, Lucy told her friend in the evening. And you? She tensed up. Why, I'll probably agree. The girl was glad. He is some kind of murky, did not believe Alexander neighbor. You just don't know him. That's the first impression. Lucy was sure of it. It's up to you to decide. Her friend pressed her lips together. She didn't like it. Okay, don't be offended. She hugged and kissed her neighbor, took her suitcase and left the room. From that moment, Alexander and Lucy formed a couple. They went everywhere together. Everything was fine. When the girl began to live together with Alexander, she began to notice that he was doing something illegal in addition to working here. One day, she decided to ask, but she was answered so rudely that she didn't even think about it anymore. "Why are your eyes red?" Julia noticed at work. "Don't mind her," Lucy turned away from her. "I see, she's hitting you," her friend guessed. No, she was telling the truth. It's just that she cried all night after a big scolding. "Okay, tell me if anything," continued the girl. With Sasha was difficult, but Lucy swallowed everything. After all, stability. She noticed that different people came to him. They talk about something, do something. But the girl didn't dare to ask about it anymore. "Lucy, aren't you going home at all?" Her mother asked her when she called. "Mommy, of course I'm going, but not now, a little later." She couldn't explain anything to the woman. "Who called you?" Alexander came up to her. "Mommy," she showed her phone. "I can also write Mom and Angelica will call me," he spoke in a stern voice. "Are you jealous?" She laughed. It was the first time he had ever hit her. Lucy stood, holding her cheek, and looked at Alexander. No one had ever touched her in her life until that moment. "If you misbehave, you'll get another," he promised her. Why? She didn't deserve to be treated like that. "You asked me how many men you've had in all the time you've lived here, and now all they say is that I picked up the poor guy. If I'd known before, I never would have done such a thing." He clenched his fists. "That was before you," she thought. She was acting roughly now. That was it. The conversation was over. The man just walked out of the apartment. Lucy wanted to leave, but she was afraid. There was no one to complain to either. When she got to work the next day, she decided to share with her friend. Can you imagine the look on her face when she told her everything? "Report it," Julia advised her. "I'm scared," Lucy admitted honestly. "Do you want me to report it?" she suggested. "Try, but if he finds out, we'll be in trouble," her friend told her. "Don't worry, we've been in more trouble than this," she promised her. Lucy returned home. She was really afraid of her roommate, but she had nothing to do but wait. A week passed. Alexander came home. "Did you snitch?" He came up to Lucy and grabbed her by the chest. "What are you talking about?" She made big eyes. "You know what?" He gathered some things, then put a chair in the middle of the room and sat the girl down. "What are you doing?" She was shaking, scared. "You'll find out now," he grinned. Alexander tied her to the chair. He doused everything with a smelly liquid for fear. Lucy did not even immediately realize that it was gasoline. He took one more look at her. He flicked a match, threw it on, and closed the doors. "Help!" She began to scream with all her might. At that moment came the realization that she was not living right, but no one heard the girl. The house was old and wooden. The logs were quickly seized by the fire. Someone called the fire department. Lucy was panting. She rocked harder on the chair. She fell down. It was easier here, but she realized she was losing consciousness. When she was at her wit's end, she felt someone lift her off the floor. "Lucy," she opened her eyes. Julia was sitting next to her. "Where is he?" The girl's first question was. "Don't worry, he's right where he needs to be," her friend reassured her. "Well and good." Lucy closed her eyes. "Imagine, you were right. He was doing all sorts of nonsense to destroy everything. Everything, and set it on fire so they wouldn't find it." Julia started whispering. "Yeah, and me for one," the girl cried. "All's well that ends well." The neighbor squeezed her hand. "What did the doctor say?" Lucy wanted to know. "Nothing happened to you, just smoke inhalation," the neighbor reassured her. "I want to go home so badly." The girl was still crying. "Everything will be all right," Julia nodded her head. Lucy was discharged. She immediately wrote a statement and went home. Now on the train, the girl sat. She understood everything and realized that she had been bad. How could she have let John down like that? What had happened to her? "Mom," she walked into the apartment. The prodigal daughter had finally returned. Her father came out to meet her. "Where's Mom?" She came up and hugged Dad. "She will come now, in the store," he replied. It was nice and cozy at home. Lucy went to her room. Everything was so nice here. "Lucy?" Mommy asked from the hallway. Mom ran to her girl. "Hello, dear," hugged her. They went into the kitchen. The woman put the kettle on and then began to assemble the table. "What a fool I was," Lucy said, looking at her mother. Don't talk bad. You were stressed. You felt bad. The woman reassured her. Yes, everything can be, her daughter agreed with her. Lucy decided to exhale a little and then start her life over again. She looked for job vacancies. Not 2 weeks later, she was invited to work. Where was it this time? Betty was sitting there knitting something. Where I went to school, her daughter confessed. Alone? The mother looked down. For now, she went over and hugged her favorite people. Good. Her mother agreed with her again. Lucy took out the diploma she had once received, packed her things and left. She had rented an apartment on the phone. Now all she had to do was pay for it. She got the job. It was easy for Lucy. Lucy had done the right thing. Now she was working in the local hospital department as a nurse, but she liked it. Lucy, would you like to take another job? Her boss asked her. I'll have to think about it. She was just about to go home. She walked down the street and realized that there was never any extra money. Hello. Lucy entered the chief's office. Greetings. Have you made your decision? He asked her. Yes, I have. She smiled at him. Then write your application and you can start work. He handed her a blank sheet of paper. Lucy realized that it would be very hard, but the money would come. She wrote everything and left the office. In the evening, she was at home, sitting and thinking about what would happen next in her life. Lucy, you will pull all the veins out of yourself, Elizabeth told her. They met in the hospital. Now they began to communicate closely. What can I do? No one can help me, she said. Do you even have a rest? Her friend asked her. When? Lucy smiled at her. I see, let's go out. Elizabeth suggested it. It was rare, but the girl thought that after the day shift, in the evening you can relax. And indeed, with Elizabeth, they could go to a cafe or restaurant, spend a pleasant time there, relax. Oh, it's so good that you're taking me out. Lucy leaned back in her chair. What else do girlfriends do? She didn't understand. In this place, they liked most of all pleasant music, good cuisine, friendly staff. Girl, can I ask you to dance? A man approached Lucy. Of course, she looked at her friend and gave her hand. Anthony, he introduced himself as they walked to the center. Lucy, it had been a long time since she had danced with anyone or socialized with the opposite sex. You're a good dancer, he said. You too, she didn't know what to say. It was nice, thank you, he said at the end as he walked her back to her seat. Well, what's going on there? Did you get to know each other? Elizabeth started asking at once. Yes, Lucy's face blushed a little. And what then? She waited. Nothing. Thank you for the dance, you heard yourself. The girl raised her glass. But she was wrong. When they were about to go home, Anthony came up to them. Can I walk such beautiful ladies home? He walked in the middle. Of course, smiled Elizabeth. She lived with the man, now taking care of her friend. They walked. There was a casual conversation. Elizabeth saw her boyfriend ahead, said goodbye and ran to him. Where do you live? Anthony asked. Why are you calling me? I look so old, she asked him. Sorry, he was embarrassed. They walked on. There's my house. They walked up to the driveway. Can we exchange phone numbers? He tried. Yes, Lucy agreed. Anthony was a nice man. She walked home, feeling as if flowers were blooming on her soul. Anthony called the next day. Although Lucy was very busy, she took a moment to talk to him. He offered to meet, but she couldn't today. It was the night shift. All I can suggest is that tonight you come here. I'll be out, she muttered. Okay, that would be fine with me for starters. She could hear how pleased he was. Lucy didn't know if he would come or not, but she hoped he would. And he came, and not just for no reason, but with flowers. God, it's been 1,000 years since anyone gave me flowers. She took the bouquet and smelled it. It makes me feel good to do this, he smiled. From that day on, Anthony and Lucy started dating. When it was a day off, they would go to the park or just sit in the yard. The rest of the days, as it worked out. Why do you live in a rented apartment? Move in with me, he suggested to her after 6 months of meetings. Would that be convenient? She was afraid. She'd already trusted him once. What are you saying? Of course it would be convenient, he laughed. I'll have to think about it, Lucy smiled. Of course, he understood that. Okay, I agree. Lucy thought to herself that she'd have found a real man. They started living together. Anthony was flying on wings. Why don't you have a rug in your house? Lucy asked him one day. I don't know, I hadn't thought about it. He looked at the floor, which was covered with linoleum. We should get some, she concluded. Suit yourself, he said, but he didn't offer to give money. Okay, Lucy isn't proud. She has enough. She'll do it all herself. In 6 months, she bought 2 carpets, bedding, a kitchen set, which was assembled by specially hired people. Could you do it yourself? The woman was surprised when she came home from work. You see, the hands do not grow from there. He waved his hands. After that, it was his turn to buy a bed, and then a large closet for clothes. Why are you doing this? Elizabeth asked her when Lucy was telling her. Why, I live there too. I wanted to be comfortable. Lucy did not understand the question. Oh, you live like this with men, you invest in them, and then they leave you, Elizabeth sighed. At that moment, Lucy remembered Alexander, shrugged. No, Anthony is not like that. Elizabeth, can you lend me a couple thousand? I saw such a nice shirt. I wanted to buy Anthony, she asked her friend. What, you also dress him? She was amazed. What's the big deal? Lucy was amazed again. Did he buy you anything besides that broom on the first date? No, Lucy thought. Well, you're ready to try. All in your Anthony. He only did what he did to bring you to his place. She marveled at the woman's naivety. Come on, he does so much for me, Lucy said. Oh, you'll be on his side no matter what you say. She wouldn't lend money to her friend. Fine, I'll borrow it somewhere else, she said. She liked to come home, cook for her lover, and then lie in a warm bed. We're having guests over today, Anthony said. Good, it's the day shift. She came over and kissed him. Are you gonna get everything ready? He looked expectant. When I'll be at work all day, let's order in. She hoped Anthony would agree. Okay, just do it yourself. I don't have time, he went out. Elizabeth, would you like to join us today? She asked when she got to the service. What's the occasion? She was curious. Nothing. Just Anthony invited some friends and I thought I'd invite you. She was scrubbing the floors and talking at the same time. Well, we'll be there tonight. My friend didn't mind. Lucy, as promised Anthony, ordered everything. She paid for the order. All that was left was to receive it at home. In the evening, she saw that many strangers had come. They were her husband's co-workers. As long as everyone was sitting at the table, talking and eating, everything was fine. But at some point, Lucy realized that the guests had had too much to drink. We should dance, Anthony said. Okay, one of the girls got up and turned up the volume. Won't the neighbors fight? Elizabeth asked Lucy. No, they are normal. The woman was sure of it. She went to the kitchen to get more snacks. Look, when she came back, her friend pointed with her eyes to a couple dancing. It was Anthony and that girl dancing. Fine, let them relax. Lucy waved them off. Yeah, if someone danced with Barry like that, I'd kill them. Elizabeth followed her friend. They sat down at the table, but Lucy couldn't help but stare at what her man was doing. They were wriggling so much, he touched the girl on every bulging spot she had. That's enough. She got up from the table and turned the sound down. What's the matter? The ones who were just bouncing on the carpet stopped. What are you doing here? She knew what she was doing was wrong, but she couldn't help it. Okay, what are you yelling about? Anthony said, and they giggled with the girl. And you still believe him? Asked Elizabeth as she put her coat on in the hallway. Stop it, Lucy interrupted her. Okay, your life, but I suggest you take a closer look, her friend warned her. Lucy returned to the room and the couple stood again, already without music, moving slowly. She saw Anthony hugging her as if he wanted to take her immediately. She got disgusted, turned away and left. She cried in the kitchen. All the guests had left, only this girl was left. Elizabeth was in pain. She started washing dishes to distract herself. She heard the front door slam, thought it was the girl leaving. Anthony? She went into the room, but there was no one there. She'd done so much for this union and he'd do this to her. She cleaned up, made the bed, and went to bed. He came in the morning, smelling someone else's perfume in the bed. Did you like it? Lucy turned to him. What? He wasn't quite sober yet. The broad, Lucy explained. Are you jealous? He chuckled. No, the girl lied. Well, sleep then. He turned on his side and sniffled. How to live after that? She just didn't sleep until morning. Hi, she said hello to everyone when she got to work. Why do you look so bad? Elizabeth whispered to her. Not sleeping well, Lucy didn't feel like sharing her thoughts with anyone. I see, I've made a mess of things, her friend guessed. What should I do? The girl almost burst into tears in response. In the first place, leave one position, all the money you cannot earn, and you are not like a man, advised Elizabeth. I've already thought about it, she nodded. Today, she went and wrote a statement. If Anthony was making a decent income, she would quit. She was so fed up. As the years went by, Lucy continued to live with the same Anthony. They were satisfied with their mutual neighborliness. There was no love lost between them. He went out without even hiding it. What's wrong with me? She asked him one day. What kind of questions? The man looked at her surprised. Just leave it. She didn't want to continue the conversation. If he didn't understand, she didn't have to. Lucy, you need another man, Elizabeth said. You look at me. Who will look at me? Self-critically answered her friend. You want to talk about yourself. You are still beautiful. Just a long time ago did not take care of themselves. The girl encouraged her as she could. I did everything for him, and he is so, cried Lucy. Everything. Do not regret anything. You still have everything ahead of you. Elizabeth hugged her. They continued to work. Lucy wondered why she had given up the night shifts. She didn't want to go home, but there was nothing to do, and she again went to an empty apartment where everything was well done. She was cooking dinner, and the man did not want to return there. Where have you been? She felt his cold body at night under the blanket. That's it. Go back to sleep. He didn't turn to her. Tears choked. That night she decided everything. She went to work in the morning, spent half a day there, took a day off. She came home, packed her things. She couldn't stop the tears. At first I wanted to write a note, but in the end I decided not to. She stopped, circled the nest she herself had made with a glance, turned around and left. Hello, she came to Elizabeth. They had agreed that her friend would stay here for a couple of days. Come in quickly. She didn't want to keep her guest on the doorstep for long. They sat for a while, cooked dinner, ate, and went to bed. Lucy did not want to disturb the couple, so she stayed out of the room until nightfall. Lucy, go to the 8th room. A man needs help there, the head nurse asked her. She put a basin of clean towels on the table. She entered the room. He was lying on the bed. She did not understand whether the man was asleep or unconscious. Quietly, she approached the bed, checked the IV. Everything was normal there. Then she began to remove absorbent cotton, syringes, and other things from the bedside table. Drink, she heard, and she was scared. Now she took a mug that was standing there, dipped the cotton swab and moistened his lips. He licked greedily. More, he asked. Yep, she repeated her movements. He wrinkled his nose and opened his eyes. The whites were red. The young man looked at Lucy. She blushed for some reason. He reminded her of John. She came over and sat on the edge of the bed, though it was not customary. If you could say so. He could hardly even speak, but he tried to smile. Soon you'll get better and you'll be as good as new, Lucy reassured the young man. Your words would be. He began to cough. The girl quickly approached. You don't have to talk much. She lifted his head to make him stop. Elizabeth, have you seen the patient from the 8th? She asked her friend in the corridor. No, why? She turned and looked at her in surprise. I don't know, but when I saw him, something inside clicked, Lucy admitted. That's a good sign, Elizabeth laughed. She decided to find out a little about who was in their facility. She asked this one, that one, the other one, the third one, and gathered a lot of information and gossip. Already in the evening, when they came home, Elizabeth called Lucy into the kitchen. They needed to talk. What are you suddenly in the middle of the week? The girl looked at the bottle of wine that stood on the table. We need to talk about something, Elizabeth said cryptically. Okay, Lucy took the glasses and poured ruby liquid into them. Listen, your new acquaintance is not simple. The hostess cut the cheese. I don't even know his name. Only later I realized that I could look it up in the medical records. She blushed again. I don't know if it's true or not, but a lot of people say about him that he doesn't do the right things. Elizabeth lowered her voice. What kind of things? Lucy asked in a whisper, leaning over the table. Both laughed afterward. No one was home and they were vociferating. I do not know, said her friend seriously, but he is not in our hospital because he fell down the stairs. Why are you telling me all this? I'm not going to do anything. Lucy took a sip of wine. Yeah, I can see you sitting there, blushing and turning white. The girl smiled. Well, enough. Time will tell, you know. He reminded me something of my first husband. Immediately became sad eyes. Then I see Elizabeth guessed why everything is so. They sat until the husband of the friend came. Then they fed Sergei dinner, talked, and went to their rooms. In the morning, Lucy got up. Her mood was very good. For the first time in a long time, she sat in front of the mirror, made her hairstyle, made up her eyes. When she stepped out into the hallway, Elizabeth gasped. Lucy, you're so? She stopped talking. Like what? She smiled. I don't know, gentle, beautiful. They left the house and headed to their work. Lucy didn't wait to be asked or forced to go to room number 8. She went there herself. The first thing she did today was look at the medical history. She took it and looked at it like she was looking at what the patient had been prescribed. She read that his name was Jacob. She glanced out the window and said the name to herself again. What are you hanging out there? He's been looking at her for a few minutes now. I see you're feeling better, she said sarcastically. Give me a drink, he said sharply, and because his voice was hoarse, it seemed to be rude. Now, a little offended Lucy, she went to the nightstand and gave him a glass of water. Thanks, Sardi. He handed her back the empty glass. It's okay, she headed for the exit. Sit with me, the young man said in a different tone. What? She stopped at the door. Lucy heard everything, but she wished he would ask again. Stay with me, he didn't refuse her. Okay, she smiled, but when she turned to him, she was completely serious. Lucy walked over to the bed, pulled up a chair and sat down on it. Tell me about yourself. He lay on his back and looked up at the ceiling. My name is Lucy. I work here. She shrugged because she didn't know what to say next. Husband, kids? He turned his head slightly in her direction. Just like that, her cheeks began to blush again. Why are there any secrets? He grinned and then grimaced. No, Lucy was confused. I'm just kidding. My name is Jacob, and I'm not really into anything, so I came to you for a while, he said. Nice to meet you. The girl was embarrassed. It was obvious that he was getting better because he was already joking and talking a lot. That's what the girl told the doctor when she left the room. She could not wait to meet Elizabeth and tell her everything that had happened, but they didn't meet until the evening when they went home. Look, I promised I'd stay with you for a couple days, but it just so happens that I wasn't even looking for anything. Lucy looked at her friend. You what? Do not even think about it. Live as long as you want. You do not embarrass us, sincerely said Elizabeth. And we made friends today, bragged Lucy to her. With whom? She didn't understand because she was quick to change the subject. Jacob, Lucy laughed. Jacob who? She still couldn't understand. What Jacob could Jacob be like? The sick one from 8th grade. Lucy laughed, offended because that was all she could think about. Oh, that's what you mean. Elizabeth laughed at the fact that she hadn't realized it for so long. Yes, he told me about himself. I did the same and all. We are already friends. She recalled how it was. Actually, you can't flirt with patients. Elizabeth wagged her finger. I know, and I don't flirt. The girls were in high spirits. At home, it was business as usual. Lucy couldn't wait to go to bed. She wanted it to be morning already, and she wanted to be by his side. She was going to work alone today. She told Elizabeth that she would get out early to go to the store. No one had come to see the young man in 2 days, so she decided to make him happy with something. Lucy bought some fruit and juice and headed for the hospital. Here I am, she slipped into the room. Hey, he was already half sitting up on the pillows. Look what I brought you. She started to put everything she bought on the nightstand. And why? He looked at it all. To make you happy. She didn't understand his mood today. Okay, he smiled at her, just like last time. After that, they ate oranges, talked and laughed. It's all you was the only thing he kept saying. After that, Lucy started giving Jacob massages. Several times each day, she went up to him for it. He would yell, but she ignored it. They were getting up, taking their first steps. In 6 months, Jacob was standing on his own feet. He looked at the girl with great love and gratitude. Would you be my wife? He asked her at breakfast. Do you honestly want that? She couldn't believe she was sitting here with him, as if all those years she'd spent in a bad relationship hadn't happened. What are you talking about? Of course you do. You are the kindest and most loyal girl. He got up from his seat and, leaning on his cane, walked over to her. Yes, I want to be your wife, she blushed. Then you will soon have the best wedding ever. He went to the seat. They were no longer in their 20s, but much more, but they were both young at heart. At the wedding were invited parents. Did not forget Lucy and Selena and her husband, who were happy for her. In addition, the former mother-in-law confirmed that Jacob is very similar to John. The friends had a nice celebration. The bride and groom were happy. How are you doing with him? Is he good? Elizabeth asked her. Very good. You have no idea how caring he is, Lucy said and looked at her husband. Didn't it seem to you that he only needed you when it was bad? Her friend began to doubt again. Look, we've been through so much together. I don't think he proposed for nothing. Lucy didn't believe it. I wish it were so. Elizabeth even spat. The guests left and the young people were alone. Jacob wasn't quite well enough to do business again, so he spent a lot of time at home. So far, so good. But as he got stronger, he started to disappear from home. At first, he tried to come home every day, but it was not very convenient for him, so after a while Lucy slept alone. The girl had nothing to do. She called her friend Elizabeth. Oh, that again, you have nothing to do. She was upset for Lucy. No, everything is fine. Now he will catch up with what he missed while he was sick, and everything will fall back into place, defended her husband's wife. We'll see. Elizabeth didn't believe anything anymore. And indeed, Jacob, not 3 months later, was right at home. Lucy wondered very much what was wrong. Why are you always at home? What about your work? She wanted to know everything about the man she loved. Don't ask unnecessary questions. If I'm at home, it's necessary, he told her rudely. Lucy did not interfere. She remembered what had happened when she had interfered in the affairs of her roommate. She was pleased that they were always together, of course. Jacob didn't spend every minute with her the way his wife would have liked. Why can't I go to work? She asked her husband, bored at home. No, you won't, he said imperiously. Can I at least go to a friend to visit? She could not sit in four walls. No, I need you. He took her hand and sat her on his lap. That made Lucy melt. She didn't need anything else. After a short time at home, Jacob started leaving again. He could be gone for a week or more. Lucy was jealous, worried. Come and visit and we'll talk, Elizabeth urged her. And if her husband came back, she didn't want to upset him. Oh, so sit with your husband, she said, as if offended. Jacob never showed up. A day later, Lucy got a call from the hospital, her heart sinking. She pulled herself together in a minute and drove to her lover's house. He was bleeding internally. What had happened? No one would explain. Beloved, come to your senses. She sat beside his bed after the operation, but all she got in response was silence. Again, a couple weeks in hospital and then bed rest at home. Lucy was there for him. Porridge, broth, medication. She could stay up nights because Jacob wasn't feeling well. Okay, I've got errands to run. It's been a month since he got out of that hospital bed. Lucy disappeared into Jacob's room for most of her working hours. After a week, the doctor gave him permission to get up, but he couldn't do it himself, so Lucy helped him. She walked with him first around the room, then in the hallway as well. Jacob said nice things, thanked her. A month passed very quickly, and during that time the young people became friends and they said goodbye very warmly. Will we meet again? The girl didn't want to let him go. Of course, he promised and got into the car that came after him. Lucy was sad. She looked after the departing car and almost cried. How are you? Elizabeth came up behind her. Everything is fine, blinked the girl, and a tear fell treacherously on her cheek. Come on, her friend took her hand and led her back into the building. Lucy continued to stay with Elizabeth. After she told her to live as long as she wanted, she hadn't even thought about it. Now she realized she had to look for an apartment. What are you doing? You've been living for so long. You don't need to move out, began to persuade her Elizabeth when her friend told her about it. I don't know, I still feel uncomfortable. Lucy was telling the truth. It's fine, trust me. I would have told you right away, the girl assured her. Lucy waited for him, but he didn't come. It was a shame. A month passed, the second, and Roma was still not there. Enough waiting, her girlfriend pitied her. You know, I try to talk myself out of it, but I can't, Lucy told her then. Another month later, a car pulled up to the hospital. I need Lucy, A young guy ran in. Now, Elizabeth met him, went to look for her friend. Hello. The girl came out into the lobby. She was very surprised that someone was looking for her. I need you. He showed her the car. The girl's heart beat faster. She had really waited for him. She turned to her friend, who looked surprised at everything that was happening. Let's go, Lucy said confidently. They climbed into the parlor. The guy there said Jacob wasn't feeling well and he'd sent him here for her. Excitement set in. Let's go, the girl said confidently. They drove off. Elizabeth stood at the window and saw everything. She was worried about her friend because she did not say anything, where she went, where to look for her in case of emergency. What happened to him? Lucy worried in the car. You'll see, it was obvious that the guy was focused on the road. They arrived somewhere outside of town, there to a house that was surrounded by a fence. The girl got out of the car, waiting for the doors to open so she could get in. She was led into the house, escorted into a room. Jacob was in bed again. He was asleep. Hello, she said loudly to make him wake up. Lucy. He opened his eyes and mumbled her name. What happened to you? Why didn't you come? She walked over to his bed. He moaned. Now she looked at the medication that was lying here. She decided to give him a painkiller. Don't, asked the doctor. He shook his head. Where is he? She rushed to the door, stepping out into the hallway. There she was shown to a room with a man in it. Are you the doctor? She turned to him. Yes, is something wrong? He got up from his chair. He's in pain, she pointed to the wall. Now he came out of his and went into the room where Jacob was lying. He saw that one of the medicines had been set aside. I wanted to give it to him, but he wouldn't let me. He sent it to you, Lucy admitted. Do you have a medical degree? The doctor turned to her. Yes, I'm a nurse, she nodded. Good, you wanted to do the right thing. You have to trust. The last words were addressed to Jacob. Thank you, Lucy said quietly. She stayed to live in the house. She called Elizabeth, told her to write a statement for her. After that, she alerted the management, and they went along with it. She sat by the bedside of a man she really liked. Lucy didn't know why she was willing to do anything for him. She gave him compresses, turned him over, gave him shots, IVs, whatever she had to do. Thank you. He took her hand and pulled her to him. Anyone would have done the same. She tried to say something. Because her heart was pounding, she was worried about being so close to him. No, he looked into her eyes and then pulled her close and kissed her. Lucy realized she loved this man. Let's try to get up. He'd been sitting up for a while now, but the bones were shattered. They'd been put back together piece by piece, so it wasn't a given that he'd be able to do anything. Probably couldn't, he doubted. But Lucy took his hands, one placed on her shoulders. The young man managed it. He stood by the bed for only a few seconds, then sat back down. There, she was breathing hard because it was a little hard. Be careful, his wife saw him off. She, as in other years, was alone in the house. There was a different kind of joy now. The husband had hired a housekeeper, whom Lucy liked to talk to. Naomi, still have time to do everything. Let's have lunch. She invited her assistant to the table. I can't do that, she made big eyes. What's the big deal? Lucy didn't understand. They sat down at the table, talked about a lot of things, mostly about life. Naomi told about her difficult fate. So Lucy opened up to this woman. Of course, it hadn't happened the first day they met. It had been a couple years since she'd been employed there. Jacob came home very rarely, and he and his wife practically stopped communicating. Lucy would rush to meet her lover when he showed up, but he'd say he was tired and wanted to go to bed. And in the morning, he'd disappear again. Jacob, I need to talk to you. Lucy told him seriously when their marriage was 8 years old. Can you do that? He even stopped. Don't you believe it? The woman was so fed up with everything. She was kind of married and kind of not. She wanted clarity. Tell me, he exhaled impatiently. What's going on with you and me? She asked him forehead to forehead. Nothing, he smirked. That smirk of his had attracted Lucy so much before, but now it pissed her off. Jacob, I'm your wife. I've been sitting here alone for years, and you won't let me go anywhere, she cried. And you remember who you were, where I got you out of, and all you can do is look after me. I've got another family, a kid. Yes, I'm married to you, but I'm fine there. You're just a backup. He said all this to her face and left the house. What? She stood there confused. Lucy went to her room, cried a lot. Naomi came over in the evening. She wanted to talk to someone, but the woman couldn't leave the room. Her heart was breaking into pieces. Strangely enough, Jacob came the next day. He went straight to Lucy's room. He sat down on a chair. What? She didn't understand. She'd had a sleepless night, so her head wasn't thinking straight. Who were you before? How did you try to organize your life? He waited. I don't understand, she thought to herself. How could he know all this? Don't talk to the servants, he guessed what she was thinking. Understandable, she looked down at the floor. It was embarrassing if Naomi also exaggerated everything. So, did you make free love? He leaned toward her. Jacob, she didn't want to talk about it. It was a long time ago and not true. Lucy wanted to forget it all like a bad dream. Jacob, what? He jumped to his feet. It was all long before she met you. She tried to speak calmly so as not to irritate the man. Yes, and being told that my wife is an easy woman, it feels good. He grabbed her arm. It hurts me. She started to get scared. Me too. He looked at her and breathed heavily. And what are you going to do now? She couldn't think of anything, only of that grip that clenched tighter and tighter. You don't need to know that. He shoved her so hard that she fell on the bed. Lucy cried, and he gave her a look as if he'd spat at her and walked out. In the evening, Lucy thought of nothing better than to get even. She was alone, pulled a bottle of hard liquor and pills from the bar. Everything was in front of her. Why would she want this life? Everything is wrong and everything is wrong. She's only ruining things for others, her parents, her friends, her men. She poured into a glass, poured in a handful of pills. When she drank the bitter medicine, she felt immediately dizzy. Lucy knew the effects would come quickly. As she was passing out, she saw the front door open. She remembered nothing else. Lucy, she heard, her consciousness was badly clouded. For the first few seconds, she didn't realize where she was or what had happened to her. But it all came. She squeezed her eyes shut, though she hadn't opened them yet. Why couldn't she even die properly? Thank God she woke up. Elizabeth was standing over her. Jacob was beside her. What's wrong with me? Lucy realized that she hadn't gone to the other world, but it couldn't be without a trace. It's okay. Her friend stroked her head. Nothing is good. Neither are the brains in your head. What? Afraid to take more so I can come and feel sorry. He spoke in a tone that made Elizabeth want to punch him in the face. I'm sorry I didn't. Lucy closed her eyes. The man left. The friends were left alone. Tell me the truth, Lucy cried. You have pinched some nerves in your face and also in your neck, but also in general. Your body is poisoned, said her friend. Lucy couldn't think about how she looked now. She was on her way to recovery. That's when she realized what she had done. When she wanted to get a glass of water, she couldn't do it. Her fingers wouldn't listen. She'd get out of bed, but after a while, she'd get tired. On top of that, my immune system was completely weakened. Let's go. Jacob entered the room when she was discharged home. She needs help, Elizabeth said. So help her, he said in a tone that demanded no objection. They left the hospital together, Elizabeth carrying her friend in a wheelchair. Afterward, Jacob put her in the car, and they drove off. At the house, Lucy saw young people, a guy and a girl. She wondered who it could be. They rent an apartment here, he explained. What about me? She wondered. It's okay, they'll be patient, and when they get ready to buy, we'll decide. It was agreed that the young people would try to live in the private sector, and if they liked it, they would buy the house. No one warned them that the landlady would be ill, but the owner assured them that she would not interfere with them. So they did. It was so cold in the room, but Lucy was too shy to ask anyone for anything. She pulled several blankets over herself. She went out to the kitchen, ate something. The young neighbors looked at her, tried to talk, but the woman didn't need it. Lucy, can I help you? A girl came up to her when she was going to the kitchen again. You have your own life. I don't want to disturb you, she said. Would you like to go for a walk? You're always in the house? Maria asked her. If it's not too much trouble, help me get dressed. Lucy was ashamed, but she hadn't breathed fresh air in months. Of course, Maria did as she was asked. Lucy went out of the house, told the girl that she could handle it from there, and she promised to follow her in a few minutes. It was freezing, and it was cold to be outside for long. Lucy didn't want to be followed. So she presumptuously went into the back of the lot. There she sat for a while, and when she felt herself freezing, she got up and walked back. But the woman did not calculate her strength. She slipped and fell. It is not known how much time passed while Maria was looking for her. "What are you doing? You'll catch cold." Maria found her at last. "Thank you," cried Lucy. She lay in her room, tears running down her cheeks. Already during the night, Lucy had a fever. It was hard for her to breathe, but the woman didn't call anyone. She was ashamed that she had to ask strangers for help. "Lucy, how are you feeling?" Maria came into the room. "I'm fine," she wheezed. "What are you talking about? You have a fever." She went over and touched her head. An ambulance was called and the woman was rushed to the hospital. Bilateral pulmonary edema. They put her in the ward, and then there were several weeks of treatment. Lucy had a long time to recover from this condition. Maria and Elizabeth came to visit her. "Thank you," the woman cried. Her friend offered to call her mother, but Lucy was against it. It was not easy for her. "What are you saying? Anyone would do that." She recognized herself in Maria. When she felt better, she was allowed to go home. "Jacob, hello," Maria called him. "We agreed to buy the house from you." He arrived and saw his wife lying in bed. She had lost a lot of weight and her face was distorted. "I'll leave her here and file for divorce. Don't worry, she won't live longer than a year. But for that, I'll give you a discount." He looked at the future owners of the house. "How can you do that to a person?" Maria didn't understand. You do not know how she acted. He scheduled a meeting for tomorrow to draw up the documents and hand over the money. "How are you?" A girl came into the room in the evening. "Why did you agree to leave me here?" Lucy asked, while she thought, if it weren't for this, where would she go? She didn't want to be a burden on her mother's shoulders. "I talked to my father. He said he would help you in your treatment." Maria sat down next to the bed. She smelled of kindness. "What are you saying? I don't need anyone's help." Lucy made a face that made Maria laugh. "You do not need to know that. You are still very young. Everything will get better. And people like your husband, you just need to throw aside." Maria saw without any stories what kind of man he is. Lucy was grateful to the girl. She lay back and smiled to herself. Living so many years with a man under the same roof, he offered her money to buy things in the stores. Why did she always refuse? She should have taken it and saved. Now at least she would have a financial cushion. It's nothing. Maria looked after a woman her husband, Mickey Lucy, didn't see often. But when she needed his help, he was there for her. "You become like a mother to me." The girl hugged her sometimes. "You grew up without her?" The woman guessed. "Yes, she left us when I was not even 3 years old." It seemed that Maria was going to cry. "Gone somewhere or not at all?" Lucy asked cautiously. "Not at all." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I'm sorry." The woman squeezed her hand. "It's okay. I don't remember her at all." The girl wiped her tears and smiled again. Lucy decided that she would try, recover, and help Maria in any way she could. But time passed and it did not get better. The cough that used to choke her was much less now. "And we have guests." Maria came to a woman's room. "Who?" The woman tensed up. More than anything else in the world, she was afraid of the arrival of her mother, that when she saw, she would not listen to anyone, just take her home. And Lucy could not afford that. "Allow me to introduce Nani." A man entered the room. He had gray hair, but he didn't look old. Jacket, pants, boots, and most of all, Lucy noticed the perfume. She knew it wasn't cheap. "Hello," she said quietly, trying to cover her face. "You know, Lucy, as much as I've heard about you, it seems like I know you personally." He walked over and shook her hand. Why this officiousness? Just Lucy. She felt the redness coming to her face. "Okay then, I'm Nanny." He looked at her. Rays of wrinkles diverged from his eyes, but that only adorned the man. They talked some more and then Maria invited them to the table. Lucy didn't want to go, but Nanny insisted. He helped her up. The woman threw on a robe. "I'm sorry I'm like this." Lucy imagined herself, her hair tousled with grain, herself in some kind of robe. "What are you talking about? You're sick. We'll sit at the table, and then we'll get you back to bed." He walked very quietly and supported her. Maria did her best. There was nothing on the table. Everyone sat down at the table and talked a lot, including the treatment. "I can't agree to this." She looked at Nanny. At that moment, she felt that he was not looking at her as a weak and sick woman. "Okay, I'll lend you the money after I can. You pay it back in installments." He tilted his head to the side, waiting for her answer. "Are you sure it will help me?" Her head was involuntarily tilted this way. "I'm 200% sure." He raised his wine glass at something else and drank. "I guess I'll be going." Lucy started to get up. "No, we're going for a little walk now." Nanny stood up and gave the lady a hand. "But me," she pointed to her robe again. "That's okay. Here's the coat." He pulled out of the closet. "We won't be long." They went outside, stood there for a while, both of them being silent. It was a pleasure to chat. He walked her to her room. "We didn't even talk." She smiled her crooked smile. "You know, sometimes even being quiet with someone is good." He took her hand, kissed it, and left. Lucy sat on the bed, looking at the closed door. That's why, when she had become so helpless and ugly, she had met a decent man. Not wanting to think about it, she picked up a book and started reading to ward off the bad thoughts. Maria saw Lucy off to the clinic, which her father had paid for. Elizabeth volunteered to accompany her, to be there for her if needed. "You don't realize what an amazing man he is," Lucy told her on the road. "You know, the fact that he gave money for treatment, yes, but you have to look at him." Again criticized another man, Lucy. "You can always tell at first sight," squinted her friend. "Yes, but this one doesn't seem to have any flaws." Elizabeth couldn't believe herself when she said that. They arrived at the clinic. There the women were placed in a room. Elizabeth had an extra place. The treatment began. Lucy underwent 3 surgeries in total. The doctors tried to relax her muscles. Whether it worked or not, it will be seen when the rehabilitation course is over. "Elizabeth, help," Lucy asked. It was not easy for her. Her face was in bandages. She couldn't even drink properly. "Now call right away. That's what I came here for." She jumped up from her seat. "You know, I thought I'd call my mother," Lucy said one night. "Don't you think it would be a shock to her? She's not a girl anymore." Elizabeth was worried about Betty. "I don't know, but for some reason I feel like doing it now." Lucy wanted to cry, but the doctor said she should do it less often. "Well, let's wait a couple more days, or in general, discharged and go straight to her," offered options Elizabeth. "Soon, you'll find out. Just wait a bit." He drove on. The car stopped outside the restaurant. The man got out, opened the door on Lucy's side, helped her out. Mickey and Maria were waiting for them on the porch. "Daddy," the girl wanted to say something, but the man put his finger to his lips. "Why are you all like this?" Lucy looked at Mickey, who seemed as confused as she was. They walked to the lounge and sat down at a table. "Lucy, when Maria started telling me about you, you reminded me of a woman. I couldn't believe it until I saw you." He put a photograph on the table. Lucy took it. There was a young woman who looked just like her. She was wearing the same blue dress at the time it was taken, and her hair was the same. "I mean, you turned me into her." It was a little uncomfortable. "No, it was just love at first word. Not even a look." Tears appeared in Nanny's eyes again. "I like you too." The woman told the truth. "Then let's drink to that." They'd all raised their glasses, except Maria. "What are you doing?" Her father looked at her. "I can't." She looked at her husband. "What? I'm going to be a grandfather?" Nanny was happy. "Yes." She looked at Lucy. "And you, a grandmother, if you agree." Of course I would agree. The atmosphere was very familial. They had a wonderful evening. After that, they got into their cars and drove home. When they stopped at one of the intersections, Lucy noticed a familiar silhouette in the car next to her. It was Jacob, and as soon as he felt someone looking at him, he turned around. The woman smiled. She could see the man's face start to turn white when he saw her in the nice car, next to the imposing man beside her. "Will you marry me?" Nanny asked her at that moment. "Yes," she smiled. She had finally found the happiness she had been searching for all of her life. "Okay, as always, your take." Smiling was also contraindicated for now. Lucy studied hard. She didn't want Nanny's money to go to waste. She did everything the doctor said. Finally, it was time to remove the bandages. Lucy looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't believe it. Yes, her head was slightly tilted to the side, but now only she noticed it, and most importantly, she could control it. But the distortion of facial expressions wasn't what it used to be, especially since the surgeon had said that as she practiced daily, it would go away completely. I can't believe it. She looked at her friend. And he did it. Everyone wanted only to cripple you, but he cured you. Elizabeth raised a finger up. It was necessary to stay here a little longer. Elizabeth was told that Lucy no longer needed an escort. She had to go home. What a pity that you and I are not back together, the friends hugged. Come, let's go to mine, reminded Lucy of her friend's promise. I will. She kissed her on the cheek and left. Lucy had time to think. After all the treatments and everything else, she would lie on the bed or sit by the window and look out there. There were only good thoughts in her head. She thought that even as she left Mickey and Maria, she would never forget them. When the girl gives birth, she could stay with her grandchildren. The door opened a little. Yes, Lucy wondered. No one had come to see her at this time already. She looked around, saw Nanny. Madama, he spread his arms to embrace the woman. I think you're flattering me a little. She stood up and walked towards him. No, I never lie to anyone, nor do I say flattering words. The man hugged Lucy, and then they sat down right there in the ward. I'm glad of that fact. She looked at him. He was handsome. Lucy began to imagine what he must have been like when he was younger. He must have had a lot of girls. Listen, you're being discharged in a couple of days. I want to pick you up myself and surprise you. He didn't say what. Okay. She didn't understand why she needed permission for that. Promise that I'll do everything the way I want, and if you don't like it, you'll fix it, he said, and then didn't look her in the eye. For what you've already done to me, I'll be grateful to you for the rest of my life. She pointed at her face. Deal. Then he took her hand as he always did, kissed it, and left the room. It was nice to be cared for by someone other than yourself. Lucy waited to be discharged, and it came, just like Nanny had said, 2 days later. Hey, he was alone. I thought Maria would be with you. The woman was surprised. Let's go. Remember, I promised you a surprise, the man reminded her. Yes, I'm very curious what it will be. She got into the car. First in line was the beauty parlor. Why? She turned to him. She realized she didn't look good, but she could do it herself, but later. Quietly, he put a finger to his lips. You promised. Lucy went. Nanny waited patiently in the car. Her hair was colored, styled. The woman Nines looked immediately younger. After that, a little makeup. She walked to the car. She felt like she had been transformed into a queen. Beautiful. Nanny couldn't help but compliment her. Where to now? She turned to him. To the store, the man said confidently. You're so crazy. She shook her head. You'll understand everything later. He spoke in riddles. Several dresses were already ready to be tried on when Lucy went in there. She wore them all. They were all gorgeous. But she chose one, the blue one. She liked that color so much. As she walked to the car, Nanny almost cried. What's going on with you? She couldn't understand.
Amanda was experiencing the very real state of dread of a clean slate, even though she was neither a writer nor a journalist. Tomorrow, she was starting a new life and a new job with accommodation. The employer is a wealthy, powerful businessman who clearly doesn't know his capital account. Without further ado, he made his conditions to her over the phone. I need a carer with a degree in psychotherapy to be near my daughter 24/0 hours a day. I have a comfortable country house with excellent living conditions. You will be completely comfortable, but for the 3 months of your probationary period, you will not get a single day off. A generous salary will compensate you for this temporary inconvenience. And the man, who called himself Carl, quoted her fee so much that Amanda's legs gave out. Her monthly income would be the equivalent of her hospital salary for the year with all bonuses and fringe benefits. They agreed that she would start her duties in 3 days. During this time, she would gather all the personal belongings she needed and select the necessary medical devices for the patient's sessions. She will then be authorized to make a list of anything else she may need in her work. The car will pick you up at your front door at 800 hours sharp. The driver's name is Andrew. Send me your home address to this number. Carl pronounced the words sharply and clearly as if he were minting coins. Amanda even thought that every minute of this man, apparently, is worth both silver and gold. Too businesslike. But it even appealed to her. She didn't respect the soreness and gruel in his speeches. She judged people by their actions, not by their sweet voice. She knew in her 26 years that time puts everything in its place and stigmatizes characters. Who's worth what? Here she is, Amanda herself, a psychotherapist with a red diploma, the beauty and pride of the faculty, the hope of the department. At school, all lightweight and character girlfriends on discos and bars in high school fluttered. She crammed a place in the medical university on the budget, partially guaranteed only a gold medal. The support should have been passed on excellent final exams. There was no money for a serious education in the family of Max, a plumber, and his wife Idaka, who worked in a bakery as a saleswoman. No, her parents were not some marginalized individuals. Father even drank. Only on holidays, did not complain of this bad habit, and with men colleagues, every paycheck did not cheat. He came from a remote, abandoned village and ended up in the city when clever businessmen bought out all the agriculture in his small homeland for the farming kingdom. A kind of holding there now appeared with dairy and meat processing plant of a new format with technological lines of the most innovative kind. Max was called to work there, but he held a grudge against the new owners, that they almost uprooted the pogost on the outskirts, where his and his wife Ida's parents were buried, that the village was torn down to nothing, turned into ashes, ruins, an archaeological monument of their former life inwardly. He knew it was just as well. The population in their village was finally getting drunk. There was no work. Everyone was leaving for the city in droves. Only he and Ida held on to their hut and 10 acres of land, but then they gave up too. Amandochka was 14 years old at that time. That's how she became a city girl. With the proceeds from the sale of land and house, they bought a 2-room flat in the city. The 5-story red brick building was strong. It would stand for a long time. Max was taken to the factory with open arms. The salary was small, but their family made ends meet. Ida quickly made friends with the women neighbors. They told her there was room in the bakery. The old saleswoman had just taken a well-deserved holiday. Working, Ida was well received, not offended. Happiness ended overnight. Max came to pick up his wife from the bakery in an old car. Clumsy bread van in the courtyard, clumsily turned around, crushed under himself a kopeck, not even immediately noticing what happened. Fortunes of the driver and passenger died on the spot. Amanda's urban life began with orphanhood. Amanda used to rush to school like a prodigy, always loved to learn. Books about relationships between people so in general swallowed overnight. So she was interested in who and how of the heroes will act when he tail-nailed, in a stalemate plunged into a stalemate, with all the guts in front of the choice put in the orphanage, where she got after the tragedy, at first snickered, but then sublimated on the study, not to think, not to remember, untimely departed loved ones. 6 months later, her foster parents took her under guardianship, but warm, cordial relations with them were not born. She moved to them in 2 rooms and a communal room, still not an orphanage, where everyone dreamed of a family and parents even at a young age. But she dreamed of growing up and living alone. Naive, touching young lady Amanda tried to assess the behavior of people, to guess who and how they would show themselves, taking into account their temperament and character, a kind of homegrown psychologist. And even more, she liked to think about the fact that a person can be broken to change the line of his behavior, to convince. In the 10th grade, Amanda disappeared in the scientific library, where she read Freud, Jung, Bandura, Halperin, Bekarev. Her classmates did not know the names of such names, and she melted and molted from her new discoveries. Her gold medal at school suffered, sitting days and nights on her heels over textbooks. Her merits did not include gifts, offerings to teachers. There was no one to pay. Talented student high marks were given sincerely and generously. Her peers did not persecute the crazy girl. They had long since given up on her eccentricities, although there were good reasons to pay more attention to her. Amanda was ravishingly beautiful, possessing that very feminine magic when men turn into slaves, admirers, barely having seen such a rare specimen of external perfection. Her hair, the color of ripe wheat, fell in waves down her smooth back. Green eyes with dark pupils beckoned to drown in their depths. Lush forms gave birth to a halo of sensuality. Graceful wrists and ankles hinted at blue blood, charm, aristocratism. Refined nature had not rested on her appearance. Only Amanda herself did not seem to notice any of this, persistently gnawed the granite of science, and ignored the languid glances of representatives of the stronger sex of all ages. After receiving a certificate of secondary education orphan, and even a medalist in the medical university took pity. Dramatic life at the girl, you can make an exception on the budget place to look for a place. She passed the entrance exam on excellent without tutors and material investments. She returned to her flat, left after the death of her parents. Private property, nothing can be done or taken away. She dressed unfashionably, modestly. Not as a garden scarecrow, of course, adhered to strict classics, a little leveling her natural charm. She didn't notice men around her from the word at all. She was so keen on Mrs. Psychology, but one day she fell for a seasoned catcher. Mason was also good-looking, ironic, daring, and unpredictable. With this Amanda managed to cap, she fell head over heels in love. She responded enthusiastically to the offer to drop by for a glass of wine, knowing perfectly well what would follow, except the guy had a nasty little soul. Amanda laid in bed on a bet with a guy from the majors who was courting the girl, but got a turnaround, told a fellow student. "Son, don't sit on the crate. I'll take this girl down without a hitch." He grinned, and then you'll follow the beaten track. Got it. Rip. Don't teach a scientist. The golden child of an important daddy. If you get her to be easy for me, I'll slip you 100 grand. So Mason worked his arse off. Amanda figured out the catch the next time they met after their wild night. Her hot bayo looked like an ice cube. She didn't faint. She wrote off her fascination with the smarmy Mason as hormones. Only the fee to the self-confident, handsome man did not get. Amanda made far-reaching conclusions for herself, and now she wouldn't let male representatives within a kilometer of her. Coffee with cakes in the nearest cafe between couples was always welcome. Going to the cinema for the premiere as a group. Why not? The rest of the attempts in her address, reminiscent of courtship, suppressed at the root. Around the crowd of those wishing only hoped in vain, all awaited a complete refusal. Trouble for the young doctor after completing the theoretical course of classes did not end there. Place and residency received deservedly in a prestigious psychotherapeutic hospital. They greedily caught every word of her new idol, the head of the Department of Rehabilitation after serious cognitive disorders. He taught the resident a lot, eagerly listening to his recommendations. He handled difficult patients, then helped her with a referral to another prestigious place. And there the persecution from the male community continued. The first swallow, or rather a persistent eagle guest, was one of the doctors with professional weight in the clinic. He did not go round and round. He called the young specialist to his office. "We need to have dinner with you today to discuss the prospects of your work in our institution. Warn me at home that you won't come for the night." He told her directly, without any offense, straight to the forehead, that her career was only through his bed. He abruptly and without regret refused the invitation, for which she soon paid the price. It turned out that before her appearance in this institution with sedatives under strict control, everything was clear. Then she showed up, and expensive pills started going missing in packs. Her involvement or non-involvement in the thefts was not investigated. They quickly pointed at the door, threatening proceedings with a subsequent wolf ticket and blacklisting in the profession. The next incident occurred at the specialized ambulance station where she got a job. The brigades had a narrow focus: to take them out of a hangover, to deal with aggressive behavior that led to a fight, injury to loved ones in a state of temporary effect. Their patients were people on the brink, balancing between the diagnosis of incompetent and incapacitated, living between bouts of mental illness and remission. Why weren't they isolated from society? There were plenty of reasons. Somewhere relatives ransomed the blood babies, and somewhere the border guards themselves were able to prey with the help of money and connections from suspicions of abnormality. Amanda had never realized there were such medical services in their city. She'd been brought here by the same call from a faculty member who'd patronized her during her residency. Trips to the inadequates, as her team called them, were over in a month. That time she was on the same team as the head of their office. He also sometimes took part in psychological raids, saying that he hadn't been to the circus for a long time and wanted to have fun. Amanda was disgusted by his cynicism, but had no choice. After a fairly quiet shift, the supervisor volunteered to give her a lift home. The institution was located outside the city. The first bus was still an hour away. Everyone was tired after a sleepless night. On her own head, the young woman agreed. But the chief didn't go to the city, but drove her to the nearest woods. "Bali, I don't like ceremonies." He breathed in her face with his breath. He wasn't afraid of anything. When already in the car, he drank half of a flat glass flask of cognac. Amanda immediately wanted to leave the car, but he only laughed. "I have half of the city receive certificates of sanity in the right cases. I'm not afraid of neither the authorities nor the traffic police." She herself could not explain later where the strength came from to slap him hard. The man's head jerked. He looked at his colleague in surprise. "Not cooperative, you say? Well, go fish out of here. The field to the city, 11 kilometers. While you walk, you will air your brains in the cold. There's no place in my team for a naughty girl. Ask any of our female employees. Now get out." Amanda didn't ask anyone. The next shift, she wrote a letter of resignation, and that was that. Out of practice again, out of work again. She stayed home for a month and a half. None of the clinics did not want to take her even to the place of a nurse. Glimmers of her unreliability filled the medical world, and it was up to everyone to interpret them. Amanda's psychotherapist, advanced in matters of different types of aggression, was well aware of such a Western phenomenon as harassment. But the woman had never imagined that she herself would become its victim. She did not yet know how the owner of a bright female beauty to put up barriers against vile molestations, rudely violating her personal space. This was something she would have to think hard about in the future. A late call from Carl the day before had interrupted a long string of bad luck. She wouldn't just go for the job, she'd crawl into it if she had to. Why was she so scared and excited at the same time? She couldn't explain it herself. What will the coming day bring me? She hummed for some reason, in a bass voice, and then asked further, will I fall pierced by an arrow? Then she would laugh loudly to drive the nasty fear further inwards. The job was ambiguous. A carer for a girl with a fatal blood disorder and Asperger's. The notorious syndrome was unfamiliar to ordinary people far removed from medical terms. In a nutshell, its effect on patients could be characterized as inability, impossibility, or inclination to communicate with the outside world. Existence in their own narrow world into which strangers were rarely allowed. In society, such people are called autistic. The anamnesis of Amanda's future ward was aggravated by a serious blood disease, autoimmune in nature. Inside the unfortunate victim, some cells kept proving to others that they were the main ones, destroying the body tissues caught on the warpath. The patient's condition was now rated medium severity. Protracted remission gave her father a chance to be near his favorite girl longer. But how long the insidious disease will behave decently, knew, in all probability, only the Almighty in heaven. The doctors only parted their hands. May and see, Carl, we are doing everything we can, but only a miracle can help the girl. You and I live in the real world, with its cruel laws of Mother Nature, ruling over all living beings on the planet. I've heard it all 1,000 times, replied the inconsolable father. What's your advice? How can I brighten her life? If she does not react to any, unconcerned, inactive, quieted, and silent. I've never seen if she can smile. For 16 years of constant uncertainty, it can drive you crazy. The renowned autism spectrum disorder specialist sitting in the chair across from Carl thought for a few seconds. Then, I have one doctor with a not-so-successful professional path. Doesn't get along for long in any treatment facility. And I can't get from her the reasons for these constant fiascos. She was one of the most intelligent students on my course, gave great hopes, burning desire to benefit disadvantaged people, followed all the methods and innovations in our field, and in clinics deflated like a balloon. Unfortunately, I cannot patronize every brilliant student of mine. Made a couple of patronages for her, but it didn't work out. She and I recently met by chance at a cake shop where I was buying a cake for my wife's birthday. Exchanged contacts in case I had information again about vacancies somewhere in our sponsored hospitals. I invite this girl. She did her residency at my hospital, and I can vouch for her almost as much as I can. Carl weighed the pros and cons and decided that he had nothing to lose. The old carers couldn't cope with Elizabeth. So maybe this young girl could do something. There were quite a few residents in his large house. His favorite cook, Vanessa, who had been with him for 30 years, her son Ashley, the gardener, and Vanessa's au pair, a maid with the exotic name of Gabriella. There's room for the unknown Amanda, with 4 guest rooms empty. Gabby, as he called the maid to himself. I'll have to give her the order to do it. The ice of the experiment that would turn their lives around had broken. Amanda decided to start the radical changes in her life with her appearance. She needed to create a new working image that would hide her natural beauty as much as possible. She didn't want this heavenly gift, which she thought was unnecessary and undeserved, to interfere with her work again. The young woman's not-so-extensive wardrobe consisted of loose trousers, baggy skirts and dark colors, oversized jumpers, blouses, low-cut shoes, and boots. A couple of funny pajamas with Cheburashka and Gina and bunnies on the lawn on the prints. Amanda liked lingerie, lace and silk, so no one would see it under her loose clothes. Her hair was a bit of a mess. They did not want to be braided into braids, which were destined to form a curl on her head. Relations of the image was completed by glasses with neutral glasses without dioptrias. She had bought them for a masquerade party at the university a long time ago. Now they came in handy again, were satisfied with the fitting. Amanda put her camouflage ammunition into a large bag and went to collect her specialized books with much more pleasure. While her patient was resting, she would read everything about autism in more detail. You don't just start treatment from scratch. You need a sober, rational approach to everything. At 800 this morning, as promised by Carl, Amanda's doorbell rang with a smiling guy. "Hi, I'm Andrew. Let me take your things to the car. The chief has asked you to check everything thoroughly for any forgotten items. You won't be able to leave for 3 months. Amanda felt so warm and relaxed by his words, she thought we'd work together. I'll do everything I can to make it work. The journey to her new home took just over 3 hours without traffic. The train station is 2 kilometers away. As if Andrew had read her mute question. There are 6 cars in the garage, 2 drivers. Anything that needs to be bought and brought in, you'll leave it to me. Amanda looked curiously around the majestic, but very pretty house of gentle sandy color with brown original elements of decor on the facade, balconies, a large terrace. The building stood surrounded by parkland, with a large outdoor swimming pool visible in the distance. Now covered with some kind of protective material, the smooth alleys were lined with neat clean tiles, a scattering of coniferous trees. One of the paths was framed with birch trees. The rose garden was wrapped in a film. On the other side of the house, there are some outbuildings resembling small greenhouses. Everywhere boxwood shrubbery, green even in this late autumn. Some exotic, with thick emerald-colored leaves. It's all guard lined up on the porch. "Welcome to our home." These are the words of a tall, formidable woman with a mop of bright red hair. "My name is Vanessa. I'm the housekeeper, like Carlson's Friedenbach, and I'm also the cook." The woman smiled a wide, kind smile and held out a large, soft, warm palm to Amanda. "This fellow with the rake is my son, Ashley. He's a bit of a handyman out of boredom, but his favorite is the garden. It's his domain." And Vanessa continued, "Have you met Andrew? The other driver's name is William. The only one left is our maid Gabriella. Her mom's Spanish. That's where the name came from." Amanda was stared at with 2 large brown eyes by a young lady with a form that was overemphasized by her work clothes. Amanda only had time to think when a tall, elderly man with a noble appearance appeared on the doorstep. She would have addressed him as Your Majesty or at least Your Graces or Your Lordship before. Gray, piercing eyes, a short hedgehog of gray hair, regal posture, broad shoulders, pleasant timbre of voice. "Amanda, I am Carl. Gabriella will show you to your room and give you a tour of the house and courtyard. Make yourself comfortable. Our Vanessa will bring the meal schedule to your attention. I expect you in my office in 2 hours for a chat. If it satisfies me, I'll introduce you to my daughter Elizabeth." He turned and disappeared into the house. Ashley picked up Amanda's luggage. Gabriella made an inviting gesture to follow her, and only Vanessa smiled reassuringly at her. "We have lunch at 2:00 p.m. Late arrivals will not be tolerated by the host. Then we'll get to know each other better. Now you have more important things to do without me." Amanda followed Gabriella through the house and hardly listened to the maid's peaceful mutterings. She was impressed by her room with its separate bathroom and toilet, its huge windows overlooking the garden, its elegant yet homely atmosphere. She did not know yet how her life in this house would turn out, but she was already eager to make herself useful, and Amanda's relationship with her foster parents was normal. But whether it was modern trends that influenced them, or whether her interests were very different from those of the older generation, they rarely saw each other. The occasion was reduced to routine phone calls like, "Hey, daughter, how are you? Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine with us too." As the dialogue usually ended, or was reduced to discussing another talk show on TV or gossip about the neighbors in the yard. It was stifling for Amanda in such a boring framework. To see each other was for her birthday, to drop by with presents before New Year's Eve. But to tell her father and mother how difficult and lonely it was for her in this world of people was out of the question. She's an adult, independent, a cutoff piece. She had not formed with her guardians a special soulful closeness, when one for all and all for one. The older generation did not understand her choice of profession, but moving to a flat, leaving on her own, approved. Adopted daughters stopped chasing them for the empty time spent near the TV in the arms of fried seeds, without attempts to develop intelligence. Different blood, different destinies, on different paths rushing. In this large, beautiful dwelling, Amanda felt in her gut some kind of unity between the household. She had not been here for half an hour yet, and she already wanted to stay for a long time. Tired of the long monologue, Gabriella led her to the door of Carl's study at the end of her tour of the building and garden, and I don't like ceremonies and antimonies. We'll be rubbing our sides against each other all day long. Don't barge in on your master, knock first. He doesn't take kindly to familiarity. Amanda nodded, agreeing to the you and thanking her for the tips. Gabriella left, swaying her hips gently, and the therapist thought to herself, there's a reason this nymph is trying so hard. Probably there's an object of her attention in the house, for the sake of which she is constantly in a state of combat readiness to beckon, to envelop with charms, to conquer the heart. Does she have her eye on the master? It's a good thing I took care of my modest appearance beforehand. I will not be so conspicuous to the domestic public as Gabriella deliberately does. They'll have to deal with that themselves. I have other tasks. Amanda knocked firmly on the study door and entered after a shout from her host. Yes, come in. I'm in my office. The office, though still an inexperienced practitioner, but a very strong theorist, liked it at first sight. Furniture made of noble wood, endless shelves with books, elegant statuettes, excellent landscapes and stylish frames on the walls. A desk with a large desktop computer, a music center with speakers in a corner, a separate cabinet with CDs. She didn't know Carl at all yet, but this office seemed to shout out loud, my owner is far from stupid, well-read and educated, intelligent and successful. Carl himself invited her to sit in the soft armchair by the coffee table, not telling her her subordinate place in the room, seating her at the desk opposite him. Ringing the bell, he summoned Gabriella. Make us a couple of cups of coffee, please, or would you prefer juice or tea? Amanda gratefully agreed to the coffee. She had been so nervous this morning that she hadn't even had breakfast at home, and now she was afraid that her traitorous stomach would give her away, rumbling loudly at the worst possible moment. Lucky for her, along with coffee, Gabriella had brought a vase of walnut biscuits, a box of chocolates, and a jug of cream. Amanda pounced on the treats like a hungry wolf, but she saw no judgment in Carl's eyes. He liked sincerity and directness in people, even smiled. We're not welcoming you well. Your first day on the road. They didn't even offer you tea. Amanda tried to say with a full mouth that everything was fine, then smiled helplessly back, wiped the crumbs off her lips, and carefully finished the rest of the biscuits. You'll have to forgive me, I was nervous, so I went for the sweets. Thanks for the coffee. Nay, let's get back to business. Carl would never admit to his partners or to this young woman that he likes to do his inspections the old-fashioned way. It was an approach he had borrowed from his father, a simple farmer who had spent his life cultivating the land and growing cereal crops. Now his father, unfortunately, was no longer able to work. 5 years ago, Carl had bought a house in the neighboring village where his parents were now living. The older generation flatly refused to move into Carl's mansion, arguing that the land in their vegetable garden was much closer and more interesting to them than the park landscapes of their son's estate. Having a kind-hearted housekeeper, the son stopped persuading them to live together. Now they only went to visit each other and to family holidays. But he remembered his father's instruction that any hired laborer should first be fed heartily, see how he copes with the meal, and then draw conclusions. If a person eats sincerely without greediness and false shyness, he will be good. But if he tells that he is not hungry, takes only a couple of crumbs from the table for decency, he will work so sluggishly. Any qualified recruiter would die with laughter from such a method of personnel selection, but Carl had long ago learnt from his own experience that the method works without fail. After handing Gabriella a tray with empty cups, Amanda's boss started the conversation. Your candidacy was recommended to me by a professor who sometimes counsels my daughter. Before you begin your duties, I would like to briefly tell you our backstory. Not as a stranger to me yet, but as a therapist, Elizabeth, my wife, and I have a late baby. My spouse passed away a week after she was born. Heart failure. I have an older son, Harry. He lives and works in Europe, in our branch in Prague, and comes here occasionally. Harry was born when my wife and I were very young. Now he is 33 years old, our student marriage, made by great mutual love, turned out to be very strong. We lived soul to soul, and only one thing upset my chosen one. After the birth of Harry, a series of miscarriages followed. Much else, my wife dreamed of a second child, a girl, even the name of her beforehand in honor of her mother, to whom my wife was infinitely attached. At the age of 44, my wife got pregnant once again. Was infinitely happy, but the doctors grabbed their heads. Even the usual examination, which all expectant mothers undergo, revealed a serious arrhythmia. The heart could not cope with the double load. Problems with the work of blood vessels began. Doctors feared that the baby was not getting enough of the nutrients it needed. My wife, almost all the time lying in the clinic, only looked at me pleadingly and asked, "Don't let the doctors terminate this pregnancy. I will take care, fulfill all their appointments. I have to carry this baby to term." Her zeal increased even more after the ultrasound showed that she was carrying a girl. The wife became finally obsessed with the idea that it was heaven that finally took pity on us and was giving us this last chance. My wife bravely endured 9 months of agonizing waiting and an endless series of procedures and injections and surgical intervention in the form of a cesarean section. The neonatologist's verdict was a blow to her. They immediately began to suspect some abnormalities in the girl. A detailed examination showed that she inherited an extremely rare genetic blood disease transmitted through the female line. People with a do not live long, 10-15 years at most. The news broke the wife, shattered everything in her already sick heart. Arrhythmia attacks began to recur with wicked persistence. She never returned home from the hospital. Elizabeth was discharged after 2 months of scrupulous observation. At first, I was desperate, resentful of the little girl for taking away the woman I loved and leaving me alone in the world. He was 17 at that time. I am still amazed that he was a wise adult even then, convinced me that everything was destined by fate, that he too had lost his mom. But it was her life, her dream and her choice. You won't believe it, but it was he who, together with the nanny, looked after the baby, quickly learned to change her nappies and feed her specialized formula. The second blow was that soon doctors noticed that Elizabeth was different, not like other children. Her genetic disorder had not yet manifested itself, but she drove us crazy by the fact that she did not react to our presence at 6 months, at 1 year, and then. Imagine the picture: the child eats, sleeps, but does not react to us, to a lot of colorful toys around him. The face is like a frozen mask, no vivid facial expressions, no gestures, as you sit or lay down in such a position and will freeze, sometimes for quite a long time. The girl turned out to be pretty, even pretty. Big-eyed, curls of blonde hair, chubby arms and legs, but she behaved like a puppet, like an artificial doll. After a while, she was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, or autism. Doctors assured her that this type of autism spectrum disorder boded well for her prospects. Body functions would be partially developed, but not fully developed. I took Elizabeth to Europe. There, the doctors were able to perform almost a miracle. They removed the sleep disorder, adapted her eating to the right regime, and taught her to react at least a little to what was going on. I came back from Germany almost happy. Elizabeth began to recognize her family, babbled something in a language we didn't know, sometimes tried to express something with gestures, but she still hadn't learned to smile. On the street, she turned around at the noise during walks on a trip to the Black Sea and pushed her legs up when Harry and I tried to bathe her in it. Later, I sent Harry to study in the UK, and as if as a reward for my troubles, my business grew and grew like on yeast, bringing me more and more income. We built this house together with my wife. It was her idea to live away from the hustle and bustle of the city, in the peaceful countryside. The man briefly interrupted his narrative. It was obvious that the story stirred up old memories in him. He looked at his watch, and then looked up a little. There are only 15 minutes left till lunch. The rest you will learn in the process of work. I'll just add the main thing. The autoimmune disease, like a hungry hydra on the hunt, reared its head sharply when Elizabeth entered puberty. Everything was always delayed compared to her peers. So it happened about 2 years ago. At her 14, those former merits of the medical profession began to fade quickly. It seemed that the destruction of cell tissue by her own internal aggressors was causing her brain activity to go to sleep. The few dozen words that she had previously spoken cheerfully were forgotten. She is once again indifferent to what is going on around her. Happy to walk with Vanessa outdoors, even swimming in the pool with Ashley's help. The girl has forgotten all those skills. More and more often, she won't let herself get out of bed, now moves only in a wheelchair, eats almost nothing, loses weight. I realize, Amanda, that you're not a miracle worker or a god. The doctors have already told me that the girl has no more than a year to live. The deterioration of her fragile body is progressing. For myself, I have labeled your tasks as facilitating her departure to the next world. I know it's impossible, but I still dream of her smiling when she looks at our park, our home, the sky, and the sun. I guess I want too much from you. Amanda was in shock. No, not at the task set before her. Here she would do everything she could, apply all her knowledge. There was such pain and despair in the man's eyes. He spoke so courageously about his daughter's imminent departure from this world that the visiting therapist's blood ran cold. So much for the high fence, the rich house, and the walls of which for so many years trouble has lived at ease. Despite the pleasant faces of the people who built it, the lunch was gorgeous. Vanessa cooked so deliciously that Amanda didn't even notice that she ate all of it. She reached for some very unusual salad, and several people answered her mute question about where Elizabeth was. "Elizabeth is having lunch in her room," said Carl. "We'll go to meet her after dinner." "Night," he says. "I've already made her favorite meatballs and mashed potatoes," Vanessa added. "And I picked a bunch of brightly colored September berries behind the house. I think Elizabeth is excited by their sharp autumn scent." Only Gabby, Elizabeth's father, had called the maid that once in a conversation in the study, and Amanda had picked up the nickname mentally, so shorter and much simpler ate, staring intently at her plate. She seemed to care the least, if at all, about Elizabeth's plight. "We'll have to keep an eye on this smashing person," Amanda decided to herself. "She's prepared my room perfectly, no complaints." But did she make any insinuations about her patient? In dealing with an autistic patient, all means are good, and all little things can be global. After these words, everyone at the table was again distracted by sweet cakes and compote. Amanda thought to herself, through her grief, dreams, and thoughts, "It's good, here they have a soul." The servants dine at the same table with the master. Everyone is praying for the girl as best they can, all trying to brighten her life. Her thoughts were interrupted by Carl's voice. "Amanda, are you ready to see your patient?" The woman replied enthusiastically that she was looking forward to it, and she was not the least bit wrong. The curtains were drawn in Elizabeth's room. It was dark, and there was a kind of gloom and despair. Amanda immediately noted to herself that this had to change. It was understandable. A seriously ill person lived here, but it was not worth emphasizing it with decorations. The girl did not react to their appearance. At that moment, Vanessa brought a tray with Amanda's favorite dishes. The therapist decided not to put her work on hold. "Carl, Vanessa, let me feed Elizabeth, and we'll have a chat. Leave us alone." "Elizabeth is your new doctor, Amanda. She'll be with you almost nonstop. You don't mind if we leave you two alone, do you?" Again, there was no visible reaction. The girl obediently opened her mouth at the sight of food, chewing and swallowing like a puppet. But Amanda began her monologue. "I'm not a doctor or a carer for you, Elizabeth. I prefer the status of friend. I'll be there for you of my own free will, even though I'm an employee. I'll tell you the truth, I'd stay with you for free, as long as I like it very much. Your wonderful house, the place, the people, you. Tomorrow you and I are going to turn your room upside down. I don't think it will be bad for your health." For a split second, Amanda thought there was a flicker of something in the girl's eyes, some glimmer of reaction, but it all went out again very quickly, and it could have been the insidious play of light and shadow in the room at all. The doctor, under a shower, decided to think about it in her room later, but in the meantime she dressed her ward in warm clothes and took her in her pram to the courtyard to breathe the strong air of golden autumn. From that moment on, the days in the house followed a long-established pattern. In the morning, Amanda and Elizabeth had breakfast together in the girls' room. Then there were the inevitable drips and injections to combat the manifestations of genetic malfunctions. The obligatory 2-hour walk in the garden, where Ashley always lovingly tended the plants. Lunch in the great hall. At this meal, Amanda would spend time with the household and then feed Elizabeth. The patient's therapeutic sleep, a new batch of medication dripping steadily through the IV for a couple of hours at a time. Dinner, now in the presence of Carl, who on weekdays was always at work, and in the evenings and weekends worked hard at home in his office. Exhausted by the endless procedures, the patient fell into a deep sleep as early as 10 o'clock in the evening. Amanda studied the works of colleagues related to autism again and again. There were no changes in terms of closer contact with her ward. neither for the worse nor for the better. The girl's condition remained stable. Amanda talked to Elizabeth about everything, told her about the plot of her favorite fiction books, read her poems, showed her reproductions of paintings from a large colorful album. Or rather, the word talking is not appropriate here at all. The doctor conducted her eternal monologue, and the girl listened to it indifferently. The other day, already beginning to despair, a little doctor found in one of the foreign articles information that to level the manifestations of isolation with autism, for patients can be a good help to communicate with the animal world. For some reason, there were no pets in Carl's house. After a general meeting of all the residents of the mansion, it was decided to get a puppy of a large dog. Most of all, for some reason, everyone liked a Canadian Newfoundland. 2 days later, Andrew brought a shaggy black treasure with stormy eyes from a kennel breeding this particular breed. He was irresistible. It is commonly believed that our lesser brothers have no intelligence. What told Tim then that the full name Timothy, and not some Bax or Lord, was so much nicer, that he was meant for Elizabeth. Finding himself in her room as a guest, the place had long since been on Amanda's errand, a more racy setting with lots of brightly colored elements. Tim headed straight for the girl and rubbed his wet nose into her palm. The doctor was sure there was a flicker of reaction in Elizabeth's eyes, lightning fast, but she had no doubt, bright and positive. For the first time, Amanda felt they were on the right track. By New Year's Eve and Christmas, everyone in the house was expecting Harry from Prague. Amanda didn't know the young man. She only remembered Vanessa's words. "He's golden." Elizabeth transforms when her big brother arrives. She can't smile, but here it's like her face lights up. Gabriella, who was present during their conversation, added, "And what a handsome man Harry is. Respectable, decent, wise, but at the same time outwardly a typical example of Hollywood hero lover. 2 characters in one person, it's so intriguing." Vanessa immediately echoed her words. "Oh, Gabriella, go change Elizabeth's bedclothes. While she and Amanda are out for a walk. You've got Cupid's days on your mind, you're not the right girl. Roll your lips." Gaby, wiggling her hips as usual, walked away, and the cook gave her a shrug and said to Amanda, "The girl goes completely off the rails when the owner's son flies home from Europe, making eyes at him, and he looks at her like she's nothing. He had a bride, but she cheated on her husband while he was earning money in the Czech Republic. They ran away, although the foolish young lady was begging us, shedding tears, just that the hair on her head did not tear in despair that she missed a rich party. It didn't help. Harry couldn't trust her at all, couldn't forgive her for seeing another man at the same time." Sighing sorrowfully, Vanessa suddenly suggested, "Come to my room tonight, and we'll have a tea party. I'll tell you my story, how Carl saved me from trouble, and why I've since nicknamed him the Angel of Goodness." On the walk, Amanda and Ashley discussed raising a new pet. It wasn't right for a pedigree dog to go pear-shucking in the yard. The gardener had told her he'd always wanted a dog. He patiently put up with Tim's antics, even forgave him for ramming a rose bush wrapped in cling film into the yard on the run. Amanda again thought that Elizabeth, sitting in the wheelchair, made some movement in the direction of the mischievous Newfoundlander, but she was in no hurry to express her assumptions aloud. We must watch and watch and watch again and again. There would be seen. After supper, when she was satisfied that Elizabeth had fallen into a restful sleep, she closed her door firmly and knocked on the next door. "Come in, I've been waiting. I've made us some green tea with molasses and gooseberry jam and nuts. Now we'll have a feast." Oksana had been in the chef's room only briefly before, but now she could examine the room in more detail. The same elegance and home coziness, spiced with personal things dear to her heart. There were many framed photographs on the wall, Carl and his wife still very young, Elizabeth in various angles, Ashley in the garden, then near the gazebo, then by the pool, a handsome young man on horseback. That's our Harry. A handsome man. Gabriella doesn't mince words. God grant him personal happiness. He's like his father in business. He should have children of his own, and he's still traveling abroad. I realize he's no monk, but all these windy girlfriends aren't what he needs for marriage. He'll make a marvelous father. He loves Elizabeth. Vanessa ate another spoonful of clear amber and emerald gooseberry jam and began her tale. After high school 35 years ago, I trained as a food technologist. Not just any culinary school in New York City. I dreamed of a career as a chef, the kind that would get me Michelin stars for the art of cooking. It didn't work out. The reason for everything was my uncluttered appearance. Height under 1 meter 90 centimeters, size 42 feet, fullness, bright copper hair, angular movements, lack of taste in the choice of wardrobe. Of course, chefs are not chosen by their clothes, but representatives of the personnel service in all the cafes and restaurants where I tried to get a job after graduation refused me under any plausible pretext. In one prestigious restaurant, only the lady in personnel was honest. Our customers often invite the chef of the dish to the room if they like it. You cannot be a business card of our institution. You're only fit for a place in the circus buffet. I don't say this harshly because I'm cynical, not at all. I like to be honest with the people I hire. It's better that way than looking away shamefacedly and keeping a kook in my pocket. And yet my traveling in agony was one day crowned with success. I was taken to a private cafe Tarina Tamara with authentic Georgian cuisine. The owner is a small, bald Georgian with hooked fingers and crooked legs. He then temporarily dispelled even the myth for me that Caucasian men are always endowed with a sharp Oriental beauty. Curly-haired, black-eyed, daring, this man said without a word of criticism. I have a wife who is ill in a female way. She can't sleep with me, and I am a man. I need to save my physiology. You'll work in the kitchen and visit me a couple of times a week. If you do well, I'll make you head chef, and then maybe chief. I, from his words at first, and a precipitate fell out, said that I would think about it, and then I calculated in the Institute 6 years at the correspondence department. Before that, 2 years as an assistant cook in the canteen. I am not today, so tomorrow 26 years old will be. And I'm still wearing girls. There's no cue for my red-headed soul. No one even looked at me with that enveloping male gaze full of desire. Ever. Blushing and pale, 2 days later informed that I agreed to all the terms. The owner of Tarina Tamara glared at me, invited me to the back room. There I learnt the basics of love between crates of vegetables, herbs and boxes of vodka, which in decanters was later passed off as cha-cha. It's a shame. It's a shame. Come on. Big physiological love on a quick hand honestly lasted between me and the chief for 1.5 years. And then I got pregnant, having learnt the news. My lover was not ceremonious, dismissed in no time. He kept bemoaning that I shouldn't talk, that his wife shouldn't know anything. He has 3 grown-up children, they'll see who he's staring at. The family will laugh. He paid me 3 months' salary in advance and washed his paternal hands of me. About the fact that the baby should be born, I informed him not immediately. All the time delayed, I felt that this news will not turn out well. With my general fullness, belly became noticeable only in the 6th or 7th month. Just before the usual official maternity leave, I found myself on the street. My rent ran out 2 weeks before Ashley was born. All I had was an aunt in a remote village. I can't even tell you how close we are. I'd never seen my father before. My mother drank herself to death when I was 20. She was homeless at first, and then she went missing. But I never doubted for a second that the baby would be. I'm alone in this world, and this will be my own blood. The landlady of my flat is not a kind-hearted person, but she took pity, waited until I gave birth and discharged from the maternity hospital. She gave me a month to do everything, and then she put up with it for free. And then her children came to live with her. They had nowhere to live, so she showed me the door. We went with a 1-month-old baby to grieve. We stayed a week in a shabby hotel, but my son was restless. The noise insulation in the building was shitty. Other guests began to complain that we did not let them sleep at night. We moved out to nowhere. I'm sitting at the intercity bus stop with my stuff and Ashley's bundle. I thought I'd go to the countryside, see if I could find an abandoned house. I had enough money in my purse for a week's existence. When an expensive dark Jeep pulled up next to the bus stop, I didn't even immediately realize that the driver was asking me what I had. I sat there in tears. Earl, and it was him. At that time, the house in these parts built a house, looking for a local specialized shop that recently erected on the highway. I gave him the address, why not, but he didn't leave at once. Later, he told me that my eyes were like those of a beaten dog, and there was so much desperation in them that he couldn't resist asking. "Woman, why are you sitting in the wind with a baby? I can give you a lift somewhere, even if it's in the other direction." I don't know how it happened, but I told him all my troubles in 2 words, as if I were in the wind. He chuckled and thought about it for a few minutes, then asked, A professional cook, you say? I'm looking for such a specialist. I need to feed 2 teams of workers every day. We can provide you with a boxcar for accommodation. Of course, I didn't hesitate for a second. It was getting late, and the bus was delayed, so I was going to sleep in the field with Ashley, right on the dead grass. I gathered up my few belongings and climbed into the warmth of the car. There was no fear or apprehension. I was used to the work, and I loved my craft. Vanessa interrupted her long story and poured her and Amanda another cup of fragrant tea. She brought from the kitchen a dish of ruddy cakes left over from dinner and glanced briefly at Amanda. Have I bored you with my tales yet, Doctor? Not at all, Vanessa. It's rare for anyone to talk to me so heartily to confide their secrets to me. I am very grateful to you for this frankness. Then I will continue, said the woman. Then everything was much more pleasant. Guy's workers met me as a mother, starved on dry meat, and I with a move them borscht boiled on a brain bone, cooked cutlets, wheat porridge, and a cast iron steamed with butter. When they brought to the table in compote, the foreman could not stand it. You cook deliciously, Vanessa. We haven't seen such delicacies here for a long time. Therefore, guys, I will order the following. We have 15 people working here. It's hard to feed that many without a well-equipped kitchen. So we'll distribute the daily duty. Who of the men will help with wood for the stove, who will carry water, who will help the cook with other hard work. She's got a little boy in her arms. He needs to be fed and nursed. So have a conscience, brothers. Don't sit on this young woman's neck, and don't offend her in word or deed. That's how I found myself in our yard about 30 years ago, when it was still under construction. Ashley is my native gold, having grown up here. After the building was finished, I stayed in the house with the owners. Carl and his wife had Harry's little boy at the time. Oh, what a table I made for their housewarming party. The guests could only wonder where he'd found such a cook. There were various people in the house, high-ranking and with connections. Many times they tried to lure me to other houses. How could they do such a thing? An angel of goodness from heaven appeared to me one autumn evening at a bus stop, and I'd betray him when others beckoned. Elizabeth was born to me, her nannies and carers, and Carl made me head of the house and promoted me to housekeeper. Everyone here has become dear to me. Even that empty Gabriella with her dreams of hunting Carl's son doesn't seem like an enemy. That's my story for you, Amanda. Maybe it will help you in your work. Amanda went to her room pensive. She used to trust the notion that the rich were stingy with their souls. In Carl's house, she saw a different world, full of warmth, respect, and a willingness to help each other through the difficult realities of life. Her fervent conviction to do everything she could to make Elizabeth feel at least a little better became even stronger in her mind. From the next day, she increased the therapeutic load for the girl, insisted on the return of massage procedures, deciding that they were not harmful to the body, broken by the disease, and on the contrary, contribute to its tone. Elizabeth was still unresponsive to the change in regime. Only the appearance of Timothy's shaggy puppy seemed to revitalize her face a little. Amanda didn't give up. She wheeled her pram around the park and sat Elizabeth down to watch Ashley's dog. He took the assignment seriously. Little Tim already knew the commands: sit, down, place, come, walk. In the house, the Newfoundland recognized only 2 people as masters: Elizabeth, at whose feet he spent all his free time, and Ashley, who fed and brought him up. The days were running by, and the winter holidays, New Year's Eve and Christmas, everyone's favorite, were approaching. Amanda, Gaby, and Vanessa were happy to decorate the already pretty house with fir tree arrangements, colorful wreaths, and sculptures of fairy tale characters. Ashley installed artificial Christmas trees in all the rooms, richly decorated with expensive toys. Everyone was in a pre-holiday mood. 3 days before New Year's Eve, Amanda received an unexpected phone call from her only close friend. Amanda, you're going to fall over. I have big news. I'm getting hastily married and moving to Florida with my lover. He's a military engineer. We're going to live near the Cape Canaveral spaceport. Amanda was instantly sad. With Olivia, they were like sisters almost, since the orphanage together always supported each other, and now they were going to be separated. Meanwhile, her friend continued to chatter into the phone. On the 30th of December, I have a farewell bachelorette party in a nightclub. On the 2nd of January, we have a one-way flight. No cancellations. Amanda, I've prepared a present for you for the road. I've made an evening dress. It's amazing. It's not worthy of your beauty, but it'll set it off beautifully. If Olivia could see me now, She would die laughing, thought the nurse. Recently, she had overheard Gaby's remarks about her. The maid gave her a scornful look after dinner and summarized. Our therapist is a moth-pale mouse gray. How only the earth bears such shapeless, faceless women. They're worthless, and men probably avoid such a scarecrow a mile away. Amanda promised Olivia to call back by nightfall and went to Elizabeth's room. The girl, after a hearty dinner, a walk before, was already fast asleep, sprawled out on the soft pillows. After adjusting the blanket, she slipped out into the corridor. The conversation with Carl was not going to be easy. At her timid knock on the door of the study, the owner responded at once. "Come in. I've just finished going through the evening's papers." "Is something the matter?" "I had an emergency." She outlined the situation in a nutshell, but I'll accept whatever you decide. "The fact is, someone close to me is going away for a long time. We won't get a chance to see each other if I can't make it to my friend's appointment." "I'm not a warden in prison or a cousin in the zone to keep you locked up, Amanda. You've been in our house for a month and a half without leave." "Elizabeth is doing well, if not brilliantly, without a hint of deterioration. I am pleased with your initiatives, methods, and practical experiments. None of them have been detrimental to my sick daughter. Be sure to go to the city. I'll give you 24 hours. On the 31st of December, after 8 p.m., you must return to these walls." Amanda didn't leave his office. She flew out on wings. Vanessa was in the kitchen, and the released nurse couldn't help but share her news with her. "I'm ugly," Amanda said, "but everyone wants a bit of colorful holiday. And when I get to see my Olivia again." "You're ugly?" She smiled back at the cook. "Save the fairy tales for others, my dear. All your masquerades won't fool me, a clever old lady who has lived in this world. I've long guessed that you hide your beauty under a dull image, wearing glasses. Don't you worry, this secret stays between us. If you're doing this, you must have a good reason. Your profession doesn't get in the way of all this cross-dressing, and my business is my business." Amanda turned round at a run, rushed back into the kitchen, and hugged the cookery master warmly and tenderly. "I know two angels of kindness in this house already. Vanessa, your kindness and willingness to understand and accept is in no way inferior to your host's graciousness." She gave Vanessa an embarrassed peck on her lush cheek, smelling of vanilla and apples, and rushed off to call Olivia to cheer her up with the news. Considering that Olivia worked as a fashion designer in one of the city's attires, the dress for Amanda turned out to be luxurious. Soft, tight silk of dark blue color emphasized every curve of the graceful figure, while not forgetting all the proper charms and roundness, the neckline, and the slit on the leg in the very point and measure. A string of pearls, a bracelet and earrings that her adoptive parents gave her on her 25th birthday, exactly in tone and in the general style of the outfit. As she dressed her friend in one of the changing booths in the atelier, Olivia froze with admiration. "Amanda, you are going to be a goddess this evening. And your fiancé, I'm sure he won't waver. He's already seen you in our shared photos. But the rest of the male sex will be at your feet, you'll see." "Oh, I'd rather stay away from all these signs of intrusive male attention." Amanda replied bitterly, "I've had enough sad experiences in this area. It seems to me that decent, if not knights, at least adequate gentlemen are no longer in this world. I have only come across representatives who managed to disappoint me for a long time. I'm going home to my flat to fix my hair and nails and stuff. I'll meet you at the club tonight." The place called Big City Lights met Amanda, who arrived by taxi with a stunningly colorful appearance. Dressed up fir trees and pine trees, colored lights and tinsel shining in their light, the crowd dressed to the hilt. Her favorite friend Olivia was wrong. There were many real beauties on the dance floor, at the tables, at the bar, worthy to become the prima donnas of this evening and the coming night. On the eve of the new year, it seemed that everyone tried not to hit in the dirt face. The audience was already relaxed by the fountain of hot drinks. Amanda breathed a sigh of relief. No one around her cared about her, but she was glad too soon. At one of the tables, Mason was having a good time with his friends. Her first and only man. At the sight of Amanda relaxed and chatting serenely with Olivia and the rest of the girls, a greedy gleam lit up in the man's eyes. And that girl just got even more beautiful. I shouldn't have let that bird out of the love cage back then. Such a friend next to me will make the image of any successful man, he thought to himself, lewdly grinning. Today again I will get her into bed. Deciding to give his victim at least one drink to make her more agreeable, Mason returned to his company, but kept Amanda in his sights. After about an hour, Mason ran out of patience. He decided to go and teach the wayward babe a lesson by humiliating her in front of her friends. Amanda suddenly appeared behind him with a banal greeting. "I see what people are like without a bodyguard. Do you want me to protect your gorgeous body from the claims of other men?" Amanda jerked away from Mason in surprise. But she didn't want to spoil Olivia's wonderful evening, so she quickly got up from the table and led Mason away from the bar. "What do you want? You and I dotted all the I's and T's a long time ago. Go back to whoever you're spending the night with, and leave me alone." But it wasn't so easy to stop the smarmy bastard. He wasn't about to give up his intentions to sleep with such a lovely woman again. "Come on, Amanda. Let's have a nice glass of red wine to this chance encounter and part as friends. I didn't mean to piss you off. I just thought you might have something to remember from the pages of our brief affair." The woman prudently decided not to make a scandal because of casual circumstances and obediently followed the man. At the counter, Mason ordered 2 glasses of some expensive grape wine and from an overseas collection, generously bought a chocolate bar and nuts sprinkled with sugar. He put his arm round Amanda's waist. The man's calculation was trivial, that now his old acquaintance would get drunk and become more docile, but he was wrong. Amanda drained her wine glass without even tasting it and looked boldly into her ex-lover's eyes. "Am I free of you now? Is the ritual honored?" Mason was not accustomed to such behavior of ladies. He had never been refused, so he began to whisper in her ear. "This is not the end of our New Year's Eve date, my dear. Don't get your hopes up. I'm going to rent a private office, and you're going to be gentle with me. I remember everything, my lovely." Here we go again, Amanda thought with annoyance. Why is it that when a man is around, all his desires are always reduced to one thing? She looked around helplessly. There was no one around except a young man calmly sipping whiskey at the counter. And their eyes met. And what did the stranger read? But he slid valiantly off the bar stool and approached them. "This woman is here with me. I only stepped away from the table for a short while, and you, young man, immediately took advantage of my absence." Mason's eyes widened in surprise. "What kind of businessman are you? Where did you come from?" Amanda remembered the rest of it as if in a nightmare. The man who'd come to her rescue had lifted Mason off the floor like a feather and given him a solid slap on the wrist. But the bitchy, temper tantrum-hardened man didn't calm down. Before retreating from the battlefield, he grabbed his unfinished glass of red wine and splashed the brightly colored liquid directly onto Amanda's dress. A huge maroon stain instantly spread across the silk. The woman turned pale, and her unexpected knight grabbed her by the arm and dragged her to the bathroom. On the way, he said something about washing the cloth quickly. Then there would be no trace left. Amanda was worried about something else entirely. No one had ever stood up for her before in her life. Suddenly, on some impulse, she threw her arms around the man's neck and dragged him with her to the club's exit, stopping only for a moment at the cloakroom to retrieve his coat. "I've got a car. I have an appointment here with an old friend, but he's running late." But Amanda didn't listen to him. As in a dream, she dragged the newly disembarked passengers along the cold autumn street to the car with checkers. She didn't care about propriety, about her ruined outfit, about the surprise of her companion who followed her obediently. There was only one single thought in her head. How good it is that I like to wear expensive silk linen. It won't be embarrassing. In her flat, where she had brought a random knight from the club. She pounced on the man like a tigress, like a ravenous March cat. And he didn't fight back. Everything that happened between them was like being in the Garden of Eden. The body sang, the soul rejoiced, the thoughts danced the can-can. How tired I am of being well-mannered and decent. Let it all be a one-time thing. I don't even know his name, though my casual lover is obviously handsome and not stupid. Of the latter, she was somehow sure, though they hadn't said a word to each other. In the morning, they fell asleep together without breaking their embrace, but Amanda woke up alone. Apart from the crumpled bed and a pillow that still smelled of a man's perfume, there was nothing in her flat that reminded her of the night before. She brewed coffee, pulled out her shoebox stash to buy Christmas presents for everyone in Carl's house. She was beginning to think of all these people as family. And the night, what could she do about it? That it had come to an end. All New Year's Eve magic comes to an end at some point. Gone was Father Christmas, having rid her of the vile mason. It's just a pity she didn't even feed the stranger breakfast, though the fridge is empty, and there's no bread, not even a slice. But she can make delicious pancakes. Okay, flour, sugar, vanilla, milk. There's a block of frozen butter in the freezer. But dream away. She needs to get back to her chores. Amanda went back to her fancy dress of a simpleton fool, packed her bag, and rang Andrew. Carl's driver had promised to take her shopping for presents and get her back to the manor by the appointed time. Amanda suddenly thought that the man she had spent this magical night with was also an angel of goodness and protection, at least for her personally. Her mood was twofold: sadness at the separation and something unfulfilled, and joy that such fireworks had happened in her rather bland life. At Carl's house, she and Andrew were there at 8 p.m. sharp, like clockwork. On the doorstep, Amanda was held up by Ashley and Tim. The gardener, embarrassed, handed her a bouquet made of spruce paws with pine cones and boughs of glittery sprinkles. Gabriella appeared on the porch, painted today, apparently in honor of New Year's Eve, in all the colors of the rainbow. Colored mascara, eyeliner, shadow, blush, lipstick. Strangely, with the maid's naturally good looks, it didn't even spoil her. Why, Ashley, you've been flaunting your attentions all over the place, and you said you loved me to the grave. Are your feelings, she misspelled the word, faded already? Have you switched to our doctor? The modest, quiet, ordinary gardener suddenly decided to fight back. I haven't had time to give you my simple gift yet, but don't touch Amanda. Don't you dare even speak to her in a disrespectful manner. You're not worth a fingernail. Gabriella gave Ashley a scornful glance and sang back. Shut up already, you gardening scarecrow. You're not the one I'm waiting here for. Harry should be here soon. The man's no match for you. Learn from him what a man with a capital letter looks and acts like. Amanda took Ashley's arm and led her away from him to interrupt the unpleasant monologue. You don't listen to her filthy words, Ashley. A man who can love plants and animals so well, it's like he's an extension of them on this earth. Some of us become an angel of kindness to others, heals and saves lost, unhappy souls. And someone becomes a kind of shepherd, guide, conductor for flora and fauna, protects it from human cruelty, uses people for good, not spoiling, sparing, wisely. You are one of such angels of goodness for Mother Nature. Be proud of such an exceptional status. You have earned it. Amanda pecked the confused Ashley on the cheek and walked up the stairs. In the distance, she heard the sound of a car approaching the house, but she was already running to her ward. It was New Year's Eve, and Elizabeth wasn't ready. Vanessa had her hands full with the table. Everything was sparkling and glittering in the decorated hall. The table was bursting with food and drink, and all the family was dressed up. Even Amanda had changed her shapeless jumper for a white blouse with lace and a black skirt. The only things left in place were the wispy curl on her head and the funny glasses on the bridge of her nose. Carl came to the table in a soft cashmere pullover and loose light-colored trousers. Vanessa had little gold tinsel bows on her head and in her apron. Gabriella wore a provocative purple dress with a low neckline and a deep cutout on the back. It was the way the dishes were served to the table. In her chair sat a rather plain Elizabeth, wearing a delicate violet-colored dress. Amanda had done her hair. The girl looked refreshed. At her feet, as usual, lay the faithful guard Timothy. Ashley had specially washed him with dog shampoo for the holiday. His coat was shiny and even silvery in places. Amanda had already handed out presents to everyone, little Christmas decorations depicting angels in various outfits. All of them, if you shook them a little, made a melodious chime. We started to sit down at the table at 22 in the evening. We had to see off the old year, thank it for all the good things, and ask it to take the bad things with it. Carl went out to hurry his son, and soon they were in the hall together. Amanda was just taking a sip of orange juice when the man she had spent tonight with appeared in front of Elizabeth and her. She even caught the end of the sentence. I'm sorry, Father, I was late. There were unforeseen circumstances. And then I also had to reschedule an important business meeting that had canceled yesterday. Amanda choked up and blinked her eyes, frightened. And then a miracle happened in front of everyone. There was no other word for it. Elizabeth became animated, reached out to her brother, and then made a gesture towards the floor and inarticulately said, "Naïf." Everyone was stunned, rushed to brace and hug the girl. Amanda slipped quietly from the table in the midst of the commotion. Let her relatives stay together, Without her, no one would notice her absence. And she needed to recover from the unexpected shock of discovery. The man of her dreams, her mysterious night visitor, and Carl's son were one and the same person. She was shaking all over with confusion. At the table, it was soon discovered that Elizabeth's carer and her doctor, who had brought such a joyous event to the house, had gone somewhere. Harry was sent in search of her, and he knocked insistently on the door of the house physician, then opened it a little, but found nothing in the room but the sound of water running in the bath. Deciding that the woman might have been taken ill, the man pushed the bathroom door resolutely open. Above the bathtub, bent over, Amanda was furiously rubbing some kind of cloth, dropping tears into the water. She turned round at the noise of the door opening. She wasn't wearing her ugly glasses now. Her hair was loose down her back, and Harry caught a glimpse of something very familiar about her. Then he moved his eyes to the bathtub where a beautiful dark blue silk dress lay. The puzzle came together. You? Harry shrieked in surprise, and I came back with champagne, provisions, a bouquet of flowers to your flat, but it was empty. I almost went mad with despair. I thought I'd lost my night fairy forever. Amanda boldly stepped into his open arms. To hell with all principles, decency, rules. This man had turned her soul upside down yesterday. People on this earth meet and get to know each other in different ways. She feels good with him. The rest doesn't matter. Harry let the girl out first. Quickly put something on. It's only 5 minutes until the chimes strike. We'll make it in time. There was no time for the usual masquerade. Amanda's blouse and skirt were all wet. She pulled on her tight jeans and white jumper in a matter of seconds. Didn't bother to brush her hair. They arrived at the table as the chimes struck. Champagne bubbles were playing in the glasses. Vanessa's culinary creations were waiting on the table. Even Elizabeth tried to put a semblance of a smile on her face. Carl did not ask his son a single question, only glanced at the young people seated at the table next to him. Vanessa thought to herself, and with that, we'll soon have children's voices in our house again. Ashley smiled happily, stroking Tim's back. Gabriella was biting her lip nervously and chewing on a red fish sandwich. So I'll have Ashley stolen from me soon enough if I'm catching crows. Now I'll have to accept the gardener's advances if I'm to stay in this house and get more of a foothold. He's not a bad chap, he's kind and handy, and quite handsome. The New Year's Eve night was truly fairy tale and magical, just as it should have been. Everyone at the table was happy in his own way. The long-awaited winter holidays flew by in the midst of entertainment and rest. Only Amanda worked tirelessly with Elizabeth to consolidate her success. On his first day at work, Carl realized that he had relaxed too much over the weekend and decided to be home early. Quietly stepping on the soft carpeted walkway, he walked to the door of his daughter's room and witnessed Elizabeth's new victories. Nuff, Tima, Daddy, Harry, Vanessa, Ashley, Amanda, Gaby. Elizabeth dutifully repeated the syllables after Amanda. Carl rounded the corner of the corridor and cried. A panel appointed by Amanda's teacher 10 days later gave a reassuring summary the disease had subsided. The process of cell and tissue destruction had slowed down. The remission period had already exceeded all known scientific limits. Carl, I told you Amanda is an excellent specialist. In our case, expecting a full recovery is a bit of a stretch. But your daughter has shown marked improvement in her general condition. She's starting to react to the outside world. Weakly, not much, but she's starting to talk again. I was thinking, if the patient lives surrounded by angels of goodness, as my student characterized it to me, he has every chance to stay on this earth for some more time, and you will make him as happy as possible for her. I am sure of it. 6 months have passed. The plane leaving on the morning flight to Prague was delayed due to weather conditions. The cute young couple kept glancing at the electronic board and at each other. Harry, what if I hadn't gone to that ill-fated nightclub then? You would have seen me in the image of a monster and would not pay attention to me, asked the mum-to-be, with a rather noticeable rounded tummy. Come on. The man answered her, adjusting his wedding ring on his finger. I would have seen you through all your disguises. Your angelic soul, your ability to do good cannot be hidden. I'd fall for such radiant magic. The iron, monotonous voice of the announcer announced the boarding of their flight. The couple hugged each other and slowly walked towards the boarding point. We will finish all my business in Prague now. You will see this beautiful city and we will hurry to our home. Elizabeth, do you know what she gave me before we left? Harry, Amanda, Elizabeth, Tim is waiting. It's a puzzle. We can't let them all down. Without us, the circle of good angels would be incomplete.